Despite the boy's smiley and friendly disposition, Chen Ping'an's entire body was tensing up in a completely involuntary manner. Back when he had faced off against Cai Jinjian and Fu Nanhua in that battle of life and death, he had grown calmer and more composed the closer he had gotten to them. Even during his battle against Bai Yuan and the subsequent chase, he hadn't been anxious at all, perhaps because he was prepared to die from the very beginning. Of course, it could have also just been due to the fact that he was too busy trying to keep himself alive, thereby allowing him to ignore his emotions. In any case, whenever he thought back on that incident now, a sense of lingering fear would well up in his heart. The only time that he could recall feeling this tense and anxious was during his battle against Ma Kuxuan at the Immortal Tomb. At the time, Chen Ping'an's palms had been clammy with sweat. Cui Chan didn't seem surprised in the slightest by Chen Ping'an's sharp intuition. He had the courage to provoke the unfathomable old man Yang back at the Mountain of Porcelain, and it was clear that he wasn't just putting up a bluff. Otherwise, Ruanqiong wouldn't have been so wary of him. He deliberately ignored the tension and anxiety radiating from Chen Ping'an's body, turning his gaze instead toward the Grand Secretary Archway, which had a strong connection to the Greatly Empire's capital city. He pointed at the archway from afar, and his expression remained quite friendly and approachable as he explained, "Doing my part is a concept championed in the school Confucianism. Comply with the natural order is a mantra followed by those in the school of Taoism. Refrain from looking outward is a motto that proponents of Buddhism stand by, and unmatched aura is something that all militarians strive for." The phrases on these 4 plaques reflect the intentions of the calligraphers that inscribed them, and the plaques are also imbued with traces of the auras of the 4 sages that established the rules here. You see that thing that the minister's holding? That thing is designed for the sole purpose of making rubbings of inscriptions. He brought that thing here in order to strip down the energy, essence, and spirit of the 4 plaques layer by layer. The first rubbing will definitely be closest in appearance to the original, but each subsequent rubbing will stray further and further away from the original, thereby also making them worth less and less. If you ask me, the refrain from looking outward plaque may be able to last 6 rubbings at a stretch, but the other 3 plaques most likely won't even be able to endure 4 rubbings. In particular, 2 of the 4 characters on the unmatched aura plaque seem to have recently died, so it shouldn't be able to last more than 2 rubbings. Chen Ping'an was astonished to hear this. He had originally thought that text was only inscribed on books, or on couplets to be plastered onto walls, or on tombstones to commemorate the names of the deceased. Never had he thought that they could hold something more significant than their meanings. With that in mind, he couldn't help but think of the text inscribed on the seals gifted to him by Mr. Qi, and the prescription papers left behind by Taoist Lu. Cui Chan continued. Those sheets of paper used for the rubbings are extremely precious. Each sheet is as thick as a wood chip, and they're a unique treasure created by a Taoist sect from another continent by the name of the True Mandate sect. This type of paper is known as a wind lightning sheet, and when writing on a wind lightning sheet, the sound of wind and thunder would ring out as the tip of the brush runs over the surface of the paper. Even His Majesty doesn't have much of this precious material in his collection, and he would only very rarely use it to reward officials for major contributions. The fact that the Ministry of Rites has brought so many wind lightning sheets for these rubbings is a clear sign of their determination. Unfortunately for Wu Yuan, he's most likely fighting a losing battle here. He thinks too much and tries to maintain control over everything, but that's simply not feasible. My guess is that he's going to encounter many obstacles when trying to carry out his work in this town. There are going to be some difficult times ahead for him. Chen Ping'an had no idea what he had just heard. It sounded as if Cui Chan were spinning a tall tale, but Chen Ping'an had a feeling that the boy was speaking the truth. Cui Chan had declared earlier that he wasn't an official of the Greatly Empire, and he didn't seem to be lying. However, he had appeared alongside Wu Yuan during the latter's visit to the blacksmith shop. Ruanqiu had speculated that he was most likely Wu Yuan's scholarly attendant. Essentially, a scholarly attendant was a servant responsible for carrying their master's bookcase around. However, at this point, Chen Ping'an was certain that Cui Chan definitely wasn't just some lowly scholarly attendant. His eloquence, disposition, and poise were only superior to those of the likes of Chen Songfeng and Fu Nanhua. Out of all of the people that Chen Ping'an knew, there was a small group of them that he recalled to be very special. For example, Old Man Yao was a member of this exclusive group, He barely ever spoke, and whenever he did, it was mostly to hurl abuse at someone. But whenever he entered the mountains, he would always display an exceptional level of energy and vigor, striking one with the illusion that he was even fitter and stronger than a healthy young man. Another example was Old Man Yang from the Yang family's medicine shop. He was a very fair and just man. Regardless of how terrible his relationship with someone was, he would never do anything to get back at that person. Similarly, no matter how close with someone he was, he would never go out of their way to give that person more than they deserved. There was also Ning Yao, whom he had only known for a short time. There was a heroic spirit about her that he had felt in any other person of the opposite sex, much like the unique aura of sharpness and hostility that Chen Ping'an had felt from Ma Kuxuan when the latter showed his true colors. Despite the fact that they had only met twice thus far, Cui Chan had claimed a spot on this list as well. It was like he was someone that transcended beyond even the likes of immortal cultivators like Fu Nanhua and Kai Jinjian. In fact, Chen Ping'an had a feeling that even if the river-severing True Lord were to appear before them at this very moment, Cui Chan would still remain just as casual and disinterested. Furthermore, when it came to being a chatterbox, only Lu Baqiao of Wind Lightning Field could compare with Cui Chan. All of a sudden, Cui Chan smiled and asked, "Chen Ping'an, can you take me to Song Jisen's residence?" Chen Ping'an was rather apprehensive upon hearing this request, but he feigned a nonchalant expression as he said, "Shouldn't we stay to see what happens to the plaques first?" Cui Chan's smile widened even further, giving him the appearance of a handsome and harmless fox immortal as he said, "I know that you're worried that I have bad intentions. Let me tell you the truth. I know Song Jisen's younger brother very well, and he's very curious about how his older brother has been living in this town for the past dozen or so years. He strongly requested me to take a look at Song Jisen's residence, so I can tell him about it after I get back to the capital city. If he's brothers with Song Jisen, then can't he ask Song Jisen himself?" Chen Ping'an asked. Cui Chan clapped his hands together in approval as he exclaimed, "You're a smart lad, Chen Ping'an. You instantly saw a hole in my story." Chen Ping'an was struggling to keep up with this enigmatic young boy. Cui Chan massaged his own glabella momentarily, then sighed. While it's true that they're brothers, they've never met even once, but despite this, they're already on very bad terms due to a certain situation concerning their parents. While they may appear righteous and glamorous on the surface, I can tell you that there's no lack of putrid things taking place in the shadows of these powerful and affluent clans. Chen Ping'an smiled as he asked, "Are you going to come after me if I refuse?" A perplexed look appeared on Cui Chan's face, following which he protested in an indignant manner, "Do I look like that type of person to you? Open your eyes up wide and take a good look at me. Do I look like the type of person who would seek retribution over minor disagreements?" "It's true you don't look like that type of person," Chen Ping'an conceded in a truthful manner. Cui Chan's brows furrowed slightly upon hearing this, and he crossed his arms as he harumphed coldly. "Why does that sound like an insult? If you're not willing to take me, then I'll ask for directions from someone else. You don't have a key, so you won't even be able to enter the yard. What are you going to be able to see?" Chen Ping'an asked. An extremely punchable smirk appeared on Cui Chan's face, one that said, "You're still too young, Chen Ping'an." It was an expression that Chen Ping'an was extremely familiar with as he had seen it on many past occasions on the faces of Lu Xianying and Gu Kan. "Fine, I'll take you to Clay Vase Alley, but I'll only lead you to the entrance of Song Jisen's residence," Chen Ping'an sighed. Cui Chan slammed a palm heavily down onto Chen Ping'an's shoulder, then asked, "See? That wasn't so hard, was it?" After that, he turned to depart, making his way away from the crowded archway. All of a sudden, he stopped in his tracks, then turned to discover Chen Ping'an walking away in the opposite direction. A slightly embarrassed look appeared on his face, and he hurriedly ran after Chen Ping'an. Upon entering Clay Vase Alley, Cui Chan began to inspect his surroundings as he mused. So this is the legendary Clay Vase Alley. Over the next century, even Fortune Street and Peach Leaf Alley combined most likely won't be able to produce as many prodigies as Clay Vase Alley. Once again, Chen Ping'an had no idea what the basis of Cui Chan's statement was, but at this point, he was already accustomed to being unable to understand the mysterious young boy. As they made their way along Clay Vase Alley, Cui Chan would occasionally jump up so that he could see in the courtyards beyond the short walls. "This is it," Chen Ping'an declared as they arrived at the entrance of Song Jisun's residence. Standing in the alley, Cui Chan quickly caught sight of the couplets that Song Jisun had written himself, and his eyes immediately lit up as he praised. This is some exceptional calligraphy. Is this the residence where Song Jisun and his maidservant were staying? I have to say, judging from his handwriting, he definitely has more potential than his brother. The more I look at it, the more impressed I am. He strode forward as he spoke, then got up onto the tips of his toes to tear down the couplets. Chen Ping'an hurriedly stepped in as he exclaimed, "What are you doing?" An innocent look appeared on Cui Chan's face as he replied, "Song Jisun isn't ever going to come back here. If I leave these couplets here to be exposed to the elements, the writing on them will gradually fade away, so it's better for me to take them back to the capital with me." However, Chen Ping'an refused to concede on this matter, shaking his head as he protested. "You can't do that. You can't tear down a set of couplets unless you're going to replace them at the turn of the year. Otherwise, the entire residence will have bad luck for the rest of the year." "I see," Cui Chan murmured in a disappointed voice. "Would you like to come in and take a seat in my yard?" Chen Ping'an offered. Cui Chan shook his head in response. "I'll pass. Given how tiny your yard is, I don't think there's even enough space to have a cup of tea in there. I'm leaving. By the way, this alley isn't a dead end, is it? Will I be able to emerge on the other side if I keep walking ahead?" "You will," Chen Ping'an replied with a smile. With that, Cui Chan promptly departed, waving farewell at Chen Ping'an as he did so. Chen Ping'an watched as the strange young boy departed, then returned to his own yard. The locust branch was still there, propped up against the wall, and he set down the basket on his back before pulling out a stool from the house to sit on. All of a sudden, he abruptly rose to his feet before charging out onto Clay Vase Alley again, just in time to see a sneaky figure running past like the wind. He quickly rushed over to the entrance of Song Jisun's residence to find that the couplets had been stolen. He was rooted to the spot as he stared at the bare walls on either side of the yard gate, and he was momentarily rendered speechless. Shortly thereafter, a wry smile appeared on his face as he sighed. "What a weird guy." Chen Ping'an heaved another faint sigh as he returned to his yard, only to find that Old Man Yang had suddenly showed up, and he was sitting on Chen Ping'an's stool while puffing out a large cloud of smoke. "What is a young man like you doing sighing like this? You need to keep your vital energy within yourself, especially if you're going to practice fist techniques," Old Man Yang mused. Chen Ping'an's heart jolted slightly upon hearing this, and he hurriedly replied, "I'll be sure to keep that in mind." "Why did that girl with the Ning surname suddenly leave?" Old Man Yang asked. "I missed out on a pouch of greeting spring coins because of her." Chen Ping'an squatted down beside Old Man Yang, then shook his head as he replied, "I'm not sure. All I know is that she has some ties with a place known as Stalactite Mountain." Old Man Yang nodded in response as he chuckled. "That godforsaken place, eh? That place sits on the border between two regions, and in order to prevent people from the two regions from sneaking back and forth, one of the three disciples of the Tao ancestor unleashed an almighty mystical ability to turn heaven and earth on their heads for the purpose of intimidation. Essentially, it's a normal mountain that was manipulated to reside in the heavens. It sounds simple, but it would have required an unfathomable amount of power to accomplish such a feat." Old Man Yang's voice was tinged with hints of both mockery and melancholy as he spoke on this subject, and Chen Ping'an naturally didn't know what was bringing on these emotions in the old man. "I hear you're planning to buy some mountains?" Old Man Yang asked. Chen Ping'an knew better than to lie to the unfathomable old man, and he replied in a truthful manner, "I'm planning to buy 5 mountains, 3 of which are close to Master Ruan's 3 mountains, namely Treasured Scripture Mountain, Rainbow Cloud Mountain, and Immortal Herb Mountain. On top of that, I'm also planning to buy Downtrodden Mountain and True Jewel Mountain." Old Man Yang's brows furrowed slightly as he asked, "Why would you decide to purchase Downtrodden Mountain? Did someone tell you to do that? Was it Ruan Qiong? Surely not. It's clear he doesn't want to get involved with you. Is Downtrodden Mountain a strange choice?" Chen Ping'an asked with a puzzled expression. Old Man Yang hesitated momentarily, then blew out a smoke ring before nodding in response. "Aside from Cloud Drape Mountain and Incense Mountain, Downtrodden Mountain is the most interesting of the bunch. However, at this point, Even the Greatly Empire's officials of astronomy and feng shui masters most likely haven't identified what's special about it, so the price won't be very high. You're going to be getting an enormous steal. Tell me what made you decide to buy this mountain. A rather awkward look appeared on Chen Ping'an's face as he explained. While I was looking at the map, a bird dropped a turd onto it, and the bird poop just so happened to land on the annotation of Downtrodden Mountain. In the past, Old Man Yao always told me that there were invisible deities in the mountains and rivers. I didn't know what mountain I should buy anyway, so I took that as a sign from the gods. A complex look appeared in Old Man Yang's eyes upon hearing mention of Old Man Yao, and he nodded as he mused. I suppose that isn't too far-fetched. Chen Ping'an smiled as he said, Master Ruan has already agreed to help me purchase those 5 mountains. Have I made good choices? You have indeed, Old Man Yang replied in an absent-minded manner. At the same time, he was feeling rather perplexed. Could it be that due to the fact that Jewel's small world was no longer restricted by the original set of rules, Chen Ping'an's luck was beginning to turn? All of a sudden, Chen Ping'an recalled something and he said, By the way, the boy with the red birthmark on his glabella told me that his name is Chui Chan, and that his nickname is Embroidered Tiger. He also told me that I can refer to him as Uncle. Old Man Yang offered no response to this, and it was something that he had already anticipated. Chui Chan was the imperial preceptor of the Greatly Empire, and even though he had no official status in the imperial court, he was the leader of all of the Greatly Empire's cultivators. It was also said that he was one of the best Go players on the entire Eastern Treasured Vile continent. However, he couldn't understand why Chui Chan had asked Chen Ping'an to refer to him as Uncle. Old Man Yang rose to his feet as he cautioned, Make sure to keep the 4 seals given to you by Mr. Qi safe. In particular, you have to make sure to hide the seal that carries the phrase, Tranquil mind begets enlightenment. You don't have to be afraid of anyone, regardless of whether it be Chui Chan or someone else, but of course don't go around provoking anyone unnecessarily either. After you purchase those 5 mountains, make sure to keep a low profile and don't make any big moves. It's far better to be safe than sorry. I understand, Chen Ping'an replied with a firm nod. After leaving the narrow and confined clay vase alley, Chui Chan made his way down the wide and bright Erlang alley. His footsteps were light and sprightly, his sleeves were swaying from side to side, and he was holding the pair of couplets that he had stolen from Clay Vase Alley in his hands. Wu Yuan had been waiting for him here for quite some time with his eyes closed, and he opened his eyes as soon as he heard the sound of approaching footsteps. Upon catching sight of Chui Chan, Wu Yuan hurriedly extended a slight bow as he greeted in a respectful voice, Teacher. Chui Chan nodded in response, then casually handed the couplets to Wu Yuan before pulling out a key to open the gate. However, right as he was about to make his way over the doorstep, he suddenly took a step backward before closing the yard gate again. As a result, Wu Yuan almost crashed into him from behind, and he hurriedly took a few steps backward while looking at his teacher with a befuddled expression. Chui Chan tucked his hands into his sleeves, then pointed his chin at the pair of door gods on the gates as he said, The ancestors of your father-in-law are hanging there. Don't they look great? Wu Yuan didn't know how to respond to such a strange question. He wasn't on good terms with his soon-to-be father-in-law, but he had an exceptional relationship with his fiancée. In the capital city of the Greatly Empire, they were renowned as an affectionate and loving couple, and their story was one that tugged on the heartstrings of many. Wu Yuan was a handsome scholar who came from a humble background. He had traveled to the capital city to undertake the imperial examination, and his performance had been rather lackluster, but he was able to win the heart of the Pillar General's daughter. Despite their requited love for one another, the vast disparity in their backgrounds made their relationship one that seemed extremely unfeasible. However, in a stunning turn of events, Wu Yuan became a direct disciple to the Greatly Empire's imperial preceptor, and his story quickly became so renowned that he was even granted an audience with the emperor himself. From that point onward, Wu Yuan's soon-to-be father-in-law had turned a blind eye to him, no longer proclaiming to his daughter that he was going to break all 3 of Wu Yuan's legs. Chui Chan strode over the doorstep as he mused, I've been thinking about a problem for quite some time now. Us followers of the school of Confucianism have always idealized the concept of a ruler who's able to ensure peace and garner the support of the people not through their actions, but through the quality of their character and their charisma alone. I wonder if that's actually possible. Have you thought of an answer to this question? Wu Yuan asked. It's a very difficult thing to accomplish, Cui Chan concluded as he pursed his lips. Wu Yuan was left speechless upon hearing this. Do you feel like I just stated the obvious? Cui Chan asked with a faint smile. I do, Wu Yuan replied in a truthful manner. It seemed that the two of them had always been very open and candid with one another, and Cui Chan wasn't incensed by Wu Yuan's blunt answer. He took a glance at Wu Yuan out of the corner of his eye, then sighed in a forlorn manner. There are many things in life where the process is more precious than the outcome. Wu Yuan took a moment to muster up some courage, then asked, Can you give an example, teacher? Cui Chan led Wu Yuan to a large square table beneath the plaque of the main hall as he said, An example would be your relationship with the daughter of Pillar General Yuan. Right now, you're in the honeymoon phase of the relationship, and even just holding her hand is enough to make you giddy with joy. However, after you marry her and do the deed with her in bed, you'll quickly be disappointed and realize that it's not as good as you envisioned it to be. Wu Yuan couldn't help but grimace upon hearing this example, and he didn't know how to respond. Cui Chan indicated for Wu Yuan to take a seat, while he remained standing and raised his head to look up at the plaque hanging above the entrance of the main hall as he continued. However, are you going to pass up the opportunity to sleep with the daughter of Pillar General Yuan just because you're aware of this? Clearly not. After a moment of consideration, Cui Chan seemed to have also realized that the example he had raised wasn't a very good one, and he amended, Let me make another example. When it comes to the average cultivator, their goal is usually to reach the middle 5 tiers, while certain prodigies would set their sights higher and aim for the upper 5 tiers. The same applies to officials serving in the imperial court. Their aspirations will vary depending on how ambitious they are. During the long and arduous journey to the top, many people would constantly keep their gaze focused on the summit of the mountain, ignoring all of the beautiful scenery along the way. Even if they do notice the scenery, they won't stop to appreciate it. It truly is a sad state of affairs. Wu Yuan fell into deep thought upon hearing this. All of a sudden, Cui Chan erupted into raucous laughter. You're actually taking me seriously? I just spouted some of the most cliched nonsense you'll ever hear. An exasperated look appeared on Wu Yuan's face as he said, In the past, I definitely wouldn't have put much thought into something like this. However, since you came out of seclusion, you adopted this disguise, then suddenly declared that you were coming to this town to meet an acquaintance, and I simply don't know what to make of all of this. Cui Chan's laughter subsided as he leaned lazily back against his chair, then said, What I said just now may have been very cliched, but it still rings true. I value practical ability over theoretical knowledge, but that doesn't mean that I take the accrual of knowledge lightly. Let me be frank with you here. For the average person, if they haven't dedicated an immense amount of time and effort into doing something, then they have no right to talk about talent or aptitude. Cui Chan was gently tapping the armrest of his chair with his finger as he continued. Only those who have truly put in the time and fully tapped into their potential in something can fully comprehend the despair of facing someone who's simply more talented than them. After doing everything in their power, yet still falling short, they'll come to realize that sometimes, a disparity in talent simply produces an insurmountable gap. Wu Yuan smiled as he said, I'm sure this is what all the top Go players on the entire Eastern Treasured Vile Continent feel when they face you in a game. That may be true, but even with all my talents, I sometimes also experience this type of despair in the face of certain people, Cui Chan sighed. You can't expect me to believe that, Wu Yuan exclaimed. An amused grin appeared on Cui Chan's face as he pointed at Wu Yuan and accused, That was a terrible attempt at flattery. Wu Yuan immediately burst into laughter, and he cupped his fist in a salute as he chuckled. Your wisdom is truly unmatched, teacher. At the same time, Wu Yuan spotted a young boy out of the corner of his eye. The boy had glittering and translucent skin, and he was seated on a small stool not far away from the residence's open-air area. There was a dazed and vacant look in his eyes, and his hands were resting on his knees as he looked up at the sky. Wu Yuan had spotted the boy as soon as he entered the courtyard, and he was immediately struck by a sense of discomfort at the sight of him. However, seeing as Cui Chan was displaying no intention of introducing the boy to him, he felt it inappropriate to ask questions. Wu Yuan turned his attention to the set of couplets on the table, and after some careful inspection he asked, Who wrote these couplets? I can tell it's a very interesting character. Chui Chan yawned and snuggled up into a more comfortable position on his chair as he replied. I think he's still called Song Jisun for now, but in a few years he's most likely going to revert back to his old name Song Mu. Wu Yuan was stunned upon learning the identity of the person who had written the couplets, and he couldn't help but ask, Teacher, why did you take these couplets? Chui Chan smiled as he replied, I wanted to show them to your senior brother. He's always going on about how I'm only a better calligrapher than him because I'm older than him. These couplets were written by his twin brother. I'd like to see what excuse he can come up with now. Wu Yuan was rather amused to hear this, and he said, he could say that Song Jisun was living out in the wilderness with nothing to do but hone his calligraphy all day, so he's had more time to practice, and that's why he's a better calligrapher. Is he really that shameless? Chui Chan asked with a shocked expression. I can definitely see him using that excuse, Wu Yuan replied with an amused nod. Chui Chan shook his head as he sighed. I really should have beaten him more. Sticks and stones are the basis for establishing rules. Wu Yuan placed the couplets back onto the table, then remarked, I'm guessing your teacher must have been very strict with you. Up to this point, Wu Yuan still didn't know who his teacher had been taught by. In fact, he didn't even know his teacher's rough lineage, and there was most likely only a small handful of people in the entire Greatly Empire who were privy to this information. Chui Chan suddenly sat up a little straighter as he replied, Nope, my teacher taught me in much the same way as I'm teaching you. That's why I turned out to be so ungrateful, treacherous, and blasphemous. Wu Yuan was dumbfounded, and he couldn't help but wonder if he had misheard what Chui Chan had just said. However, Chui Chan confirmed in an indifferent voice, You heard me right. Back when I was studying under my teacher, I wasn't as extreme in my methods and beliefs as I am now, so I only dared to propose pursuing knowledge and practical ability in tandem. In response, my teacher immediately lambasted me, labeling me as ungrateful, treacherous, and blasphemous. Chui Chan sat up even straighter as he spoke, and he looked straight into Wu Yuan's eyes as he continued. You know what the most infuriating thing is? I didn't even get a chance to fully articulate my proposal before my teacher threw all those derogatory labels at me. He wasn't even willing to consider my proposal for a day, an hour, or even a minute. I had a junior brother at the time, and whenever he raised any questions about our reading materials, our teacher would be sure to meticulously consider his answer for fear of passing on information that's even slightly inaccurate. Do you know what was the longest time he took to consider one of my junior brother's questions before giving an answer? Chui Chan raised a finger as a hint. Given the nature of the question, Wu Yuan knew that it had to have been a very long time, so he guessed, a month. A peculiar look appeared on Chui Chan's face, and he shook his head as he revealed the answer. A decade. Wu Yuan was rendered completely speechless upon hearing this. Chui Chan heaved a long sigh as he mused in a self-deprecating voice. It's all in the past anyway, and I'm no longer hung up on any of this. Besides, even if I can't get over it, what else can I do? Chui Chan rose to his feet as he spoke, then turned to Wu Yuan as he continued. I brought you here today because there's someone I want you to meet. I have to do something in the meantime, so go and wait for our guest outside. Wu Yuan did as he was instructed, standing up before making his way out of the courtyard. Meanwhile, Chui Chan strode over to the dazed young boy's side, then crouched down as he carefully inspected the boy while stroking his own chin, as if he were examining the boy for imperfections. As dusk arrived, Wu Yuan led a man wearing a veiled bamboo hat into the main hall. Only then did Chui Chan rise to his feet as he made an inviting gesture to Wu Yuan and the guest. Take a seat. After sitting down onto a chair, the man removed his veiled bamboo hat to reveal a handsome, yet sickly pale face. His energy, essence, and spirit were all in complete disarray, as if he were carrying severe injuries, and not only was he coughing incessantly, there was a faint bloody odor emanating from his body. Cui Minghuang! Wu Yuan exclaimed with a stunned expression before quickly turning to Chui Chan. Only then did it occur to him that Chui Chan and Cui Minghuang shared the same surname. Could it be? Wu Yuan's skin was crawling, and he was beginning to grow concerned about whether he was going to be able to leave this residence alive. Chui Chan had always abided by the mantra that he only killed when the rules mandated for him to do so. But the problem was that no one knew what set of rules he was using to dictate his conduct. Even a close disciple like Wu Yuan would never dare to proclaim that he knew exactly what his teacher was thinking at any given moment. Cui Chan dragged a chair over to the dazed young boy, and his back was facing Wu Yuan and Cui Minghuang as he smiled and said, "There's no need to be concerned. One of you is a fellow clansman of mine who has managed to catch my eye, while the other is my prized disciple whom I have very high hopes for. So rest assured that I have no intention of harming either of you." Wu Yuan mustered up some courage before asking, "Teacher, you're from the Cui clan?" Cui Chan ignored the question. A wry smile appeared on Cui Minghuang's face as he explained, "Granduncle was evicted from the Cui clan long ago, and he's forbidden from being buried at our ancestral grave." Wu Yuan's brows furrowed slightly upon hearing this. Cui Chan remained standing with his back facing Cui Minghuang, and Wu Yuan is reassured. "Don't worry. His Majesty has known about my unsightly past from the very beginning. I'm sure you have many questions for me, Wu Yuan. I'll get Cui Minghuang to answer them in my stead." Wu Yuan was silent for a moment, then asked the question that he was most curious about. "Teacher, did you orchestrate Qi Jingchuan's death?" Cui Chan offered no response. Cui Minghuang's expression remained unchanged as he replied, "A while ago, Qi Jingchuan received a secret letter from Mountain Cliff Academy, informing him that his teacher has passed away." Wu Yuan's brows furrowed slightly upon hearing this. This was an astonishing secret that he hadn't heard about at all, and it was a piece of information that was most likely only known to the leading figures of the 3 schools and 72 academies of Confucianism. However, just like many other scholars, Wu Yuan had caught wind of some rumors related to this subject. In the short span of no more than a century, the 4th deity statue that had been worshipped in Confucianist temples had first been removed from its position of sage and placed among the 72 saints, then continued to be moved down the ranks of the 72 saints all the way until it was at the very bottom. This spring, all statues of the former sage had been removed from the Confucianist temples altogether. Not only that, but someone had attempted to sneak one of the statues into a Taoist temple, only to discover not long thereafter that the statue had been knocked down and smashed to bits by a bunch of so-called ignorant rabble-rousers. Furthermore, everything that this former sage had written in his entire life had been banned by the imperial courts, and all copies of his works were destroyed. Additionally, all of the laws and policies that he had introduced were abolished by all of the empires, and his name was removed from all historical records. It had been a gradual yet steady fall from grace, which had concluded in the complete erasure of a once revered figure from the face of this world. And at this moment, Cui Minghuang was revealing to Wu Yuan the shocking conspiracy that had led to this point. Right now, Mountain Cliff Academy has already been stripped of its status as one of the 72 academies, and I understand that your Greatly Empire is quite opposed to this development. After all, Qi Jingchuan and Mountain Cliff Academy have played an integral role in educating the general public and elevating the Greatly Empire from its former status as a settlement of northern savages. Now that the Academy is no longer attracting the top scholars in the northern region of Eastern Treasured Vile Continent, the official hierarchy of the Greatly Empire is undoubtedly going to be dealt a severe blow. However, this was all inevitable, and the Greatly Empire was powerless to change anything. The Emperor of the Greatly Empire certainly wouldn't be so foolish as to make enemies out of so many powerful forces just for the sake of Qi Jingchuan. After learning about his teacher's demise from the secret letter, Qi Jingchuan knew that he wouldn't be able to count on any external assistance. Hence, he had to face the massive predicament of preserving the status of Mountain Cliff Academy on his own. He knew that if he were to emerge from Jewel's small world at the conclusion of his 60-year tenure, then it would inevitably come to light that not only had his cultivation base not been negatively affected during his time in the small world, but it had improved instead, and that revelation would have led to him being hunted down by certain powerful figures in the school of Confucianism. Not only that, but some prominent figures in all of the other teachings would have also been itching to make a move. They had finally managed to bring down his teacher, and they certainly wouldn't have allowed Qi Jingchuan to take his teacher's place. A faint smile appeared on Cui Minghuang's face as he spoke, and he turned his gaze toward Cui Chan, who was still staring at the dazed young boy. Cui Minghuang's eyes were filled with admiration as he continued, "Ultimately, it was Ruan Qiong's early arrival in the small world that proved to be the final nail in the coffin, completely cutting off the path of retreat that Qi Jingchuan was most likely to have taken." Meanwhile, Cui Chan rose up from his haunches and began to gently pry back the young boy's eyelids with his fingers. After hearing what Cui Minghuang had just said, he murmured, "Where's the wine? You should have bought a few flagons when you were passing the wine shop on the way here." Cui Minghuang could see the befuddlement in Wu Yuan's eyes, so he explained, "Even though Ruanqiong adopted a stance of absolute neutrality and didn't interfere with the town's affairs following his early arrival, his presence in the town is quite a significant factor in itself. Essentially, his arrival forced Qi Jingquan's hand, making it impossible for him to negotiate with the four sages and suggest that he remain in the town for another 60 years, thereby allowing Mountain Cliff Academy to cling on to its status as one of the 72 academies for 60 more years." Cui Minghuang smiled as he continued, "His teacher is dead, and the books written by his teacher have been banned, while the policies he proposed are no longer being adopted by anyone. The Mountain Cliff Academy that Qi Jingquan had painstakingly established in the northern wilderness of Eastern Treasured Vile Continent is also gone, leaving him with no place to return to. The small world that he had called home for the last 60 years had also met its demise, so what choice did he have but to die? Only by surrendering his own life could he ensure that the fragmented Mountain Cliff Academy is no longer seen as a threat by anyone. If it wasn't for Qi Jingquan, Mountain Cliff Academy wouldn't even have been regarded as anywhere near our Lakeview Academy's equal, let alone instated as one of the 72 academies. Lakeview Academy is certainly a well-established academy, but it's lacking in innovation. If it wasn't for the existence of Mountain Cliff Academy forcing Lakeview Academy to make a whole host of changes, it would have only been left further and further behind by the changing times, eventually falling to a slow and inevitable demise." Cui Chan remarked as Chan Ping'an emerged from the well with a basket full of soil on his back. He was dumbstruck to find a bunch of well-dressed scholars standing outside the well. The group of scholars was led by none other than the elderly minister from the Ministry of Rites, who had earlier been denouncing Wu Yuan while standing on a ladder propped up against the archway. Standing beside him was the former kiln supervision official, the man rumored to be Song Jisun's father. His complexion was a little fairer than during his days spent in the town, and the rest of the group was composed of around 5 to 6 men who appeared to be in their 30s or 40s, all of whom appeared to be even more noble and authoritative than Master Song. Not only was Chan Ping'an dumbfounded by the sight of the group of officials, these officials were just as astonished to see Chan Ping'an. With 3 pouches of gold essence copper coins under his belt, he was the wealthiest individual in the entire town, and all of the officials were stunned to see that he was nothing more than an impoverished young boy performing manual labor at Ruanqiong's blacksmith shop. How was it possible that this boy possessed wealth equivalent to half of the Great Li Empire's imperial vault? Was he really the same person as the one who had purchased 5 of the mountains being sold by the Great Li Empire? Ruanqiong didn't appear on the scene. Instead, it was Ruanxiu who was accompanying Wu Yuan, and the latter wore an indifferent expression with his gaze directed slightly downward, making it appear as if he were very displeased with the group of officials from the Ministry of Rites. This wasn't exactly a far-fetched notion, considering these officials had just barged onto his territory and taken such a precious set of treasures. To the surprise of everyone, it was Wu Yuan who ultimately backed down during the incident that had taken place at the archway earlier. He had allowed the right-hand minister of the Ministry of Rites, Donghua, to take all 16 characters on the plaques in the form of rubbings, and even though an accompanying 7th-tier cultivator had confirmed that the characters on the plaque had been completely stripped of their essence, so there was no need to waste any further precious wind lightning sheet, Donghua still looked as if he wanted to take all of the plaques by force. In the end, he refused to budge, only leaving the archway after using up all of the wind lightning sheets that he had brought with him. Following their departure, the group of officials from the Ministry of Rites settled in a courtyard prepared by an affluent clan on Peach Leaf Alley. Wu Yuan had only just established a positive reputation in the town for creating a whole host of employment opportunities in the form of the 4 major construction projects, but he had instantly been knocked back down to square one in the wake of this incident. The incident had already become a popular subject for gossip among those on Fortune Street and Peach Leaf Alley, with most of the people discussing the matter scoffing at Wu Yuan for being a cowardly pushover. Some said that if Wu Yuan had resisted against the officials from the Ministry of Rites to the very end, then they would have been inclined to admire and respect him for his courage, but given his cowardly actions, it was going to be quite difficult for him to establish any sense of authority over the town's residents. Chan Ping'an gently jumped down from the edge of the well with the basket full of soil on his back, standing before the group of officials. Donghua wore a benevolent smile as he stroked his beard and said, "You must be Chen Pingyan, right? My surname is Dong, and I work in the Greatly Empire's Ministry of Rites. I've come to you not for any official business. I simply wanted to see what the owner of those 5 mountains looks like. Now that my objective has been fulfilled, I can say that it was well worth the trip." The elderly minister burst into laughter as his voice trailed off, and with the exception of Master Song, all of the other officials from the Ministry of Rites also began to chortle with mirth, as if the minister had just told a hilarious joke. Chen Pingyan was left feeling rather awkward as he couldn't understand the official dialect being spoken by the elderly minister at all. The corners of Wu Yuan's lips turned up ever so slightly upon seeing this, and despite his fluency in the town's dialect, Master Song displayed no intention of interpreting for the group of officials. His allegiance didn't align with these officials, and they had done away with all pretenses of geniality in the wake of a recent altercation. If it weren't for the fact that the emperor had personally selected him to go on this trip, there was no way that he would have been brought along. The Ministry of Rites was filled with scholars, all of whom had to stave off an immense amount of competition to reach their current posts. Hence, verbal altercations that took place in the Ministry of Rites were truly spectacular. Thankfully, Song Yuzhong was an extremely adaptable person, as evidenced by the fact that he was able to stay in the town for so long, so after returning to the capital city, he merely kept a low profile and rarely ever said anything, and he didn't feel particularly frustrated or indignant about his situation. Minster Dong was someone who had spent the majority of his life climbing up the ranks in the Ministry of Rites. The Ministry of Rites was the only ministry in the Greatly Empire's imperial court capable of contending with the Ministry of War, and the fact that Donghua had managed to climb all the way to the position of third in command in such an important ministry was clear testament to his wiles and cunning. He immediately realized that there was a language barrier between himself and Chen Pingyan, and in order to save himself from this awkward situation, he turned to Ruan Xiao with a smile, hoping that she could interpret for him. However, he quickly came to the realization that this was a terrible idea. Ruan Xiao was a militarian sage that even the emperor had to treat with the utmost respect. In contrast, he was only a mere minister in the Ministry of Rites, and it would have been extremely insolent of him to order Ruan Xiao around. If she were to feel slighted by him and complain to her father, then all it would take would be for Ruan Xiao to pass on these complaints to the capital, and he would find himself in a great deal of trouble. Perhaps he would still be able to keep his position, but his future prospects would have definitely been quite bleak, to say the least. All of these thoughts ran through his mind in an instant, and he immediately decided against his original plan. Instead, he decided that he was going to ask if Ruan Xiao were comfortable living here, and whether she wanted the Ministry of Rites to arrange a clean and more refined courtyard for her to stay in on Fortune Street or Peachleaf Alley. However, before he had a chance to raise those questions, he was met by an astonishing sight. In the eyes of all of the officials from the Ministry of Rites, Ruan Xiao was a lofty figure who stood far above them, but she displayed no qualms at all in approaching the dirty and disheveled Chen Pingyan. She then seemed to have informed him of what Donghua had just said, and all the while, Chen Pingyan listened with a calm and composed expression, while all of the officials from the Ministry of Rites looked on in astonishment. Chen Pingyan was naturally unaware that such a mundane interaction in his eyes would have such an impact on these officials, and after listening to Ruan Xiao had to say, he smiled as he said, "Xiao, please tell this old gentleman that I used to be an apprentice at a dragon kiln, and right now I'm nothing more than a manual laborer at the blacksmith shop. It's all thanks to Master Ruan that I was able to purchase those 5 mountains." A wide smile immediately appeared on Ruan Xiao's face upon hearing Chen Pingyan refer to her as Xiao, and she gladly passed on Chen Pingyan's message to Donghua in the official dialect of Eastern Treasured Vile Continent. All of the officials of the Ministry of Rites were naturally well versed in the official dialect. Otherwise, it would have been confirmed without a doubt to all outsiders that the Greatly Empire was nothing more than an empire of northern savages. In fact, in the capital city, one's fluency in the official dialect was an important standard for differentiating between whether they came from a privileged or not so privileged background. Donghua's smile widened even further as he gave a gentle nod, and after hearing Ruan Xiao's explanation, he declared that he wasn't going to interrupt Chen Pingyan any further so he could continue with his work. He also asked Ruan Xiao to pass on his regards to Ruan Xiong. stating that even the emperor held Ruanqiong in very high regard, so he certainly didn't dare to disturb Ruanqiong if he was busy. Ruanqiong didn't have much interest in exchanging pleasantries with Donghua, and she merely gave him a half-hearted response. However, Donghua didn't dare to display any displeasure to the daughter of the esteemed sage, and after introducing to Ruanqiong a few scenic locations in the capital city for her to visit, he promptly departed with the rest of his group. Master Song, whose full name was Song Yuzhang, was situated at the very rear of the group, while Wu Yuan was trailing along behind him. Ruanqiong accompanied Chen Ping'an on his way to tip out the soil in his basket, and as they walked along beside each other, she said, "Father told me that the purchase of the mountains is going to be confirmed soon. In addition to these officials from the Ministry of Rites, you and a Fenghuo master from the Ministry of Astronomy will also need to be present. Only after all three parties have stamped and signed the agreement will the transaction officially be completed." However, at the moment, the Fenghuo masters are still in the process of assessing the Fenghuo on all of the mountains, and it'll most likely be a few more days before they emerge from the mountains. After a moment of contemplation, Chen Ping'an set down his basket, then took a glance at the figures busily working around him before suggesting, "Let's go to the creek and continue our chat there." "Sure," Ruanqiong agreed with a smile. She then lowered her voice as she continued, "Aside from the Fenghuo masters, the Ministry of Astronomy also sent many unorthodox cultivators on this occasion, and they've brought a pair of juvenile mountain-moving apes with them, one of which is a silverback ape, while the other is a long-arm ape. Normally, both of them are free to roam in the forests, and only when their services are required to destroy or move mountains are they called upon. On top of that, they're also going to use peak-shifting armored warriors crafted by Taoist sects that specialize in talisman creation. Those things are absolutely ingenious. Prior to activation, each armored warrior is nothing more than a thin sheet of talisman paper, but upon being injected with energy by a cultivator, the talismans would transform into armored warriors that possess incredible strength and stand at around 70 to 80 feet in height. They're not as strong as mountain-moving apes, but the good thing about them is that they're absolutely obedient, so no mishaps will occur when using them. In contrast, mountain-moving apes are extremely violent, and juvenile mountain-moving apes in particular are exceedingly difficult to tame. If they go out of control, severe casualties are sure to follow, and killing them would be a massive waste. I heard that there will also be bringing mountain-opening puppets personally created by the leading figures of Moism. Even I've never seen those puppets before, so I'm definitely going to take a look if I get the chance to do so. Also, my father picked out 2 shops for you. The pastry shop and the Berklover shop. They just so happen to be right next to one another, and I'm sure you're very familiar with them as well. If you're fine with those 2 shops, then my father can help you finalize the deal right away. These are just minor deals that don't concern the property of the empire, so it's nowhere near as complicated a process as it is to buy mountains. Chen Ping'an considered this for a moment, then replied with a smile, "I have no problem with that." All of a sudden, a thought occurred to Ruanqiong, and a mysterious look appeared on her face as she continued, "My father told me in private that the Emperor of the Greatly Empire recently made a declaration. Seeing as the town is now a part of the Greatly Empire's territory, all of the prized treasures and artifacts in the town will be purchased at high prices by the Imperial Treasury. In the end, around 20 decent artifacts were sold to the Empire, and around half of them came from the affluent clans on Fortune Street and Peachleaf Alley, while the other half came from the middle and lower class residents of the town. However, the prices that the artifacts were sold for weren't very high at all. Ultimately, the Emperor of the Greatly Empire donated 7 or 8 items out of his personal collection to make a total of 30 artifacts, which are essentially going to be bonus items given to the buyers of the mountains free of charge. The average person naturally doesn't know which mountains have bonus items attached to them and which don't, but my father has been informed that bonus items will definitely be attached to Divine Elegance Mountain and Downtrodden Mountain, and those bonus artifacts will be among the cream of the crop. Aside from that, there's a good chance that the Imperial Court will assign a mountain god each to Lamp Bearer Mountain and Downtrodden Mountain. Chen Ping'an took a deep breath, and his brows furrowed tightly as he crouched down beside the creek. There was a sense of surrealism to all of this. Never had he imagined that a day like this would come for him. His dreams and aspirations had only been limited to being able to put up couplets and door gods during the spring festival, and having enough money to eat meat-filled steamed buns on a regular basis. Ruan Xiu crouched down beside him with a curious expression and asked, "What's wrong?" Chen Ping'an opened his mouth to reply, but didn't know what to say, so he could only shake his head in the end. He then plucked a blade of grass up from the ground before absent-mindedly placing it in his own mouth. After a brief moment of silence, Chen Ping'an turned to Ruan Xiu with a smile as he said, "Ruan Xiu, I'm sorry for calling you Xiu Xiu in front of those people. Please don't be mad at me. I was really nervous when I saw those officials, so I wanted to pretend to be on really good terms with you." Ruan Xiu offered no response to this, then suddenly asked a completely unrelated question. "Have you received any news about your friend recently? The one that's always carrying around a saber and a sword?" It took Chen Ping'an a moment to realize who Ruan Xiu was referring to, and he replied, "You mean Ning Yao? I haven't heard anything from her ever since she left." A pleased smile appeared on Ruan Xiu's face upon hearing this. All of a sudden, Chen Ping'an cast his gaze toward the stone bridge, where a familiar red blur was approaching him at a rapid speed from afar. For some reason, a sense of foreboding welled up in Chen Ping'an's heart, and he hurriedly rose to his feet. Before long, Li Baoping had arrived by his side, wearing her usual red padded jacket, except it was extremely dirty and wrinkled. She raised her head to look up at him, and there were tears swimming in her eyes. Her face had become significantly more tanned, and she sobbed in a heartbroken voice, "Mr. Ma from the school is dead. Before he died, he told me to come and find you." Chen Ping'an quickly inspected his surroundings to ensure that there was no one else around aside from Ruan Xiu, and only then did he latch onto Li Baoping's hand as he said in a gentle voice, "Let's go somewhere else." The bank of the creek was normally quite a peaceful place, but ever since that time when Chen Ping'an sensed that there was something dirty in the creek, he had become very reluctant to venture into the water. In her despair, Li Baoping had informed Chen Ping'an of Ma Zhan's death without thinking, but as soon as she blurted out the reason for her visit, she immediately regretted her decision because Chen Ping'an wasn't alone. Li Baoping had already met Ruan Xiu once before on the Azure Cow Ridge. At the time, the Golden Boy and Jade Girl of the Taoist sects had also been present. One of them kept a pair of large fish, one red and one green, while the other had a pristine white deer, and both of them had ties with the Li clan. Of course, visually speaking, Ruan Xiu didn't appear to be a bad person, but she was precisely the type of person that Li Baoping was terrified of in her current state. Despite their previous encounter, she didn't know Ruan Xiu very well at all, and Ruan Xiu appeared to be quite kind-hearted, but Li Baoping could never be sure if Ruan Xiu would suddenly stab her in the back someday. After all, she had just suffered a similar betrayal, and before she even knew what had happened, Ma Zhan was already dead. Initially, Ma Zhan and Cui Minghuang had traveled together like a pair of long-lost friends, discussing the classics and quoting poetic phrases to one another while drinking to their heart's content. In the words of Li Huai, Cui Minghuang had to have been either Ma Zhan's illegitimate son or his grandson. Otherwise, there was no way that they could have shared such a close bond. No one could have anticipated that Cui Minghuang would suddenly turn on Ma Zhan, resulting in the latter's death. According to Ma Zhan, there were two particularly outstanding figures among all of the scholars following the teachings of Confucianism on Eastern Treasured Vile Continent, and they were nicknamed the Old Gentleman and the Young Gentleman. Cui Minghuang was the vastly renowned young gentleman of Lakeview Academy, and prior to his cold-blooded murder of Ma Zhan, everyone had been extremely fond of him. He was polite, sophisticated, and extremely well-read, seemingly having an answer for any question that was thrown at him. The only one who didn't like Cui Minghuang was Lin Shui, but coming from an affluent clan on Peach Leaf Alley, Lin Shui always seemed to be quite cold and hostile to everyone. He wasn't on very good terms with the other children, so even though he had directed barbed insults at Cui Minghuang on many occasions, no one had paid him any heed. They merely thought that he was envious of Cui Minghuang for being such an intelligent and refined gentleman. Ruan Xiu didn't know why Li Baoping seemed to be a little wary of her, but she still suggested, "How about we go to the newly constructed swordsmithing room?" However, Li Baoping was absolutely petrified, and she grabbed tightly onto Chen Ping'an's hand while shaking her head vigorously with a pleading look in her eyes. "Chen Ping'an, please take me somewhere where it's just going to be the two of us." Chen Ping'an gave Li Baoping's hands a gentle pat as he said in a soothing voice, "Trust me, the swordsmithing rooms here are the safest place we can be." Li Baoping looked intently into Chen Ping'an's eyes, and they were just as clear and pure as the water in the creek. She was suddenly reminded of the first time that she had walked along the creek as a child. Looking at the slow-moving water, she had felt as if she were never going to grow up. Having just endured such a traumatic event, a sense of overwhelming grief and indignation suddenly welled up in her heart, and she burst into tears as she sobbed. "You better not be lying to me, Chen Ping'an. Trust me," Chen Ping'an reassured with a firm yet gentle look in his eyes. With that, Ruan Xiu led the two of them to the new swordsmithing room, and after pulling out the key to open the door, she turned to Chen Ping'an with a smile as she said, "I'll stay out here and keep a lookout for you too. I won't let anyone in, not even my father." A slightly awkward look appeared on Chen Ping'an's face and he quietly asked, "Can you bring her something to eat and drink? I'm assuming once the adrenaline wears off and she's had a chance to calm down, she's going to be completely worn out, and she'll need to have something to eat to recover her energy. This happened to me a lot when I was a kid." Ruan Xiu nodded in response, then turned away slightly before pulling a small embroidered pouch out of somewhere before handing it to Chen Ping'an. "There are 5 peach cakes from the pastry shop in there. I'll bring her some water as well. Tell her not to eat the cakes too fast or she's going to choke on them." Chen Ping'an and Li Baoping sat down across from one another on a pair of small stools, and she accepted the peach cakes from him, but displayed no intention of eating them. "Tell me what happened," Chen Ping'an encouraged in a gentle voice. Li Baoping commenced her story, but in a very uncharacteristic display, she was speaking very slowly and meticulously. However, this was a good thing for Chen Ping'an as it allowed him to process her story and think about what he was hearing, as well as to consider the situation from the positions of those involved. Prior to Ma Zhan's death, his journey with the 5 children had been going very smoothly. The ox-drawn carriage and the pair of horse-drawn carriages had traveled several hundred kilometers, and during that time Ma Zhan and Cui Minghuang had gotten along exceptionally well with each other, quickly becoming a pair of close friends, or so it appeared on the surface. However, one day while Ma Zhan was examining the children's homework, he suddenly declared that he was going to discuss the route that they were going to take for the rest of the trip, and that there was a chance that the two of them would part ways. However, the children waited for a very long time, but neither Ma Zhan nor Cui Minghuang returned. Hence, Li Baoping and Li Huai had gone out to find them, and it was Li Huai who stumbled upon Ma Zhan, laying in a pool of his own blood. His injuries were so severe that he was bleeding out of seemingly every single part of his body, resembling a bamboo basket that had just been lifted out of a creek, leaking water out of all of its countless gaps. On the brink of death, Ma Zhan asked Li Huai to bring only Li Baoping to him. Following Li Baoping's arrival, he grabbed onto her hand, and he had already lost the ability to speak prior to this, but somehow, perhaps out of sheer force of will, he was able to pass on his final words to Li Baoping before passing away. At this point in her story, Li Baoping had already broken down into sobs, making it impossible to form any further coherent sentences. Chen Ping'an didn't really know how to console people, so all he could do was move his stool a little closer to Li Baoping and help her wipe away her tears as he repeated the words, "It's all right," over and over again in a soothing voice. After taking some time to compose herself, Li Baoping continued, "Mr. Ma grabbed onto my hand and told me that I had to find you and tell you in private to be wary of people of Lakeview Academy and the capital city of the Great Li Empire. He told me that none of those people are to be trusted." "What happened to Shi Chuanjia and the others?" Chen Ping'an asked with a grim expression. A grin broke through Li Baoping's sobs as she replied, "They're currently leading the coach driver around and around in circles near Clay Vase Alley. Lin Shui feels like the coach driver isn't a good person, and he says that maybe he colluded with Cui Minghuang to kill Mr. Ma. After we buried Mr. Ma, the coach driver told us that we wouldn't be able to go to Mountain Cliff Academy as Mr. Ma and Cui Minghuang had just been informed that Mountain Cliff Academy had defected to Great Sui Nation, which is an enemy nation. Without Mr. Ma or Cui Minghuang accompanying us, we won't even be able to make it to Great Sui Nation as we'll be executed as traitors of the Great Li Empire as soon as we get to the border. We didn't know what to do at the time, and Mr. Ma didn't tell us what to do before he passed away. Should we return to the school in the town to wait for the next teacher, or should we go to Great Sui Nation to continue our journey to Mountain Cliff Academy? In the end, we had no choice but to return here with the coach driver, but upon our return, He told us that all of our clans had already moved to the capital city of the Great Li Empire. He told us that the imperial court of the Great Li Empire had instructed all of our clans to leave some people behind in the town, so if we didn't believe him, we could go home and ask the people there for confirmation. Right at this moment, Ruan Xiu knocked on the door of the swordsmithing room before entering with a kettle of water, and Li Baoping immediately fell silent. Ruan Xiu then promptly departed, closing the door behind her as she did so. Only after the door had been closed did Li Baoping continue. That coach driver is very suspicious. He intentionally asked us which one of us knows a boy by the name of Chen Ping'an living on Clay Vase Alley, and he claimed that he had a message to pass on to you from Mr. Ma. I felt like something wasn't quite right, so I didn't say anything at the time. You did the right thing. Here, have some food first, Chen Ping'an urged. Li Baoping did as she was told, scarfing down 3 peach cakes in a row before gulping down some water, then quickly wiped her face with the back of her hand as she hurriedly continued. After that, the 5 of us found a chance to talk in private, and we decided that we couldn't just let him do whatever he pleased. Hence, we came up with a plan. On the day before we were about to return to the town, Shi Chuanjia began to fake an illness, and I volunteered to look after her. After that, I told Li Huai the layout of the area around Clay Vase Alley, and he lied to the coach driver, telling him that he knows you. His excuse was that his father, Li Er, used to work at the Yang family's medicine shop, and you often went there to sell medicinal ingredients, but he failed to recall this when the coach driver first asked about you. Chen Ping'an was rather perplexed to hear this, and Li Baoping explained, I often saw you going into the mountains to pick medicinal herbs on your own, and whenever you come out from the mountains, your basket is always full of medicinal ingredients. Chen Ping'an didn't know how to react to this, but he nodded to indicate that she had explained herself sufficiently. At the same time, there was a hint of lingering fear in his heart, and he said, What you guys did was actually very dangerous. Li Baoping nodded in response. I know, that's why all of us made a pact together before we decided to execute this plan. Lin Shui said that he's nothing more than an illegitimate child who's detested by everyone, so he doesn't care if he dies. Shi Chuanjia isn't very bright, and she just follows my lead on everything. Li Huai said that he had nothing to be afraid of, and that if he dies, he'd just enter the cycle of reincarnation. His father is a coward, but he's certain that if something happens to him, his mother would definitely avenge him. Dong Shuijing was the most selfless one out of all of us. He said that he's the strongest one, so if our plan gets exposed, then he wants us to run away while he stays behind to fight the coach driver to the death. However, I didn't think it was going to be that dangerous. If that coach driver really wanted to kill us, then he wouldn't have waited until we returned to the town. He definitely wanted us to do something for him, and we think that the true objective of the mastermind behind all of this definitely has something to do with you. After eating the last 2 peach cakes, Li Baoping took a deep breath, then continued. After that, we finally made it to Apricot Blossom Alley, and I told Dong Shuijing and Li Huai to take the coach driver on a shortcut to Clay Vase Alley, but the path is very narrow, so they had to leave the carriages behind. In reality, Li Huai is leading him around in a big circle. After they left, I immediately ran away to find you in Clay Vase Alley, but you weren't home. Thankfully, one of your neighbors just so happened to be passing by, and they told me that you were working at the blacksmith shop. I was about to panic at the time. Chen Ping'an was astonished to hear this, and he asked, Did you think of this entire plan? Li Baoping shook her head in response. Lin Shui contributed some ideas as well. For example, he said that we can't just take the coach driver somewhere far away from Clay Vase Alley and tell him that that was Clay Vase Alley. If we do that, there's a very good chance that we'll be exposed and we won't be able to get far away at all. Instead, the best course of action was to get the coach driver to stop at Dong Shuijing's house on Apricot Blossom Alley, which isn't too far away from Clay Vase Alley, but still far enough away that we can take a long route without arousing any suspicions. We figured that once the coach driver arrived on Apricot Blossom Alley, he was definitely going to ask passersby to confirm our location, and once he confirms that we're not far away from Clay Vase Alley, it'll be far easier to deceive him. As it turned out, we were right. Chen Ping'an couldn't help but pat her on the head as he praised. That was a brilliant plan. Li Baoping smiled as she said, If you're not home, then there's no chance of the truth being exposed, so we won't have to worry about Li Huai and Dong Shuijing at all. A curious look then appeared on Li Baoping's face as she asked, "By the way, why is it that both Mr. Ma and the coach driver wanted to find you?" Chen Ping'an shook his head in response. "I'm completely in the dark about that myself. For now, all I know is that it may have something to do with the things left behind for me by Mr. Qi. Mr. Qi had once taken him to secure leaves from the old locust tree, but he had already used the leaf with the Yao character on it. As for that jade hairpin, both Qi Jingchun and Ning Yao had told him that it was just an ordinary hairpin, and that it wasn't made from any special material. Through the process of elimination, Chen Ping'an deduced that the seals were most likely to blame. Qi Jingchun had gifted him with a total of 4 seals, and Old Man Yang had previously told him to keep the seal with the Jing character on it safe in particular. The complete phrase on the seal was "Tranquil mind begets enlightenment," and aside from that, Mr. Qi had told him that he could use his mountain and water seals on any paintings of mountains and rivers that caught his fancy. All of a sudden, Li Baoping pulled out 3 yellow locust leaves, then offered them to Chen Ping'an as she said with a sad expression, "The leaves turned yellow." Chen Ping'an was immediately enlightened upon seeing this. It had to have been these 3 ancestral blessing locust leaves that had kept Ma Zhan alive just long enough to deliver his final words. As it turned out, he was correct. If it weren't for the fact that Li Baoping had been carrying these 3 ancestral blessing locust leaves with her this entire time, Ma Zhan most likely wouldn't have been able to utter even a single word before he met his demise. At this point, Chen Ping'an had already moved all of his most valuable belongings to the blacksmith shop. Master Ruan was allowing him to live in the earthen hut that Ning Yao had previously stayed in, and in addition to the 8 snake gall pebbles that had retained their color, all of the other normal snake gall pebbles, of which there were around 100, had also been moved out of his ancestral residence on Clay Vase Alley and Lu Xianyang's residence, and they were currently piled up in a corner of the room. However, the Jing character seal and the mountain shaking guide were 2 things that he still kept on him at all times. After pondering the situation, he said, "Right now, that coach driver should be on his way to the blacksmith shop. How about you hide here for now while I bring Shi Chuanjia and Lin Shui here from the carriages? If the coach driver asks where I am, I can get the people here to tell him that I have a habit of going out for strolls. Also, once the coach driver arrives at my house on Clay Vase Alley, he'll most likely have already figured out that he was led on a long route. Of course, he may not say anything about it, but from now on, all of you are truly going to be in danger." Chen Ping'an could see that Li Baoping was still rather hesitant, and he reassured in a firm voice, "Trust me. Now that your clan has moved away to the capital city, this is the only safe place left for you in this town. You seem to really trust the blacksmith here," Li Baoping remarked. Chen Ping'an shook his head in response. "I have much more trust in the rules that Mr. Qi told us about." A bright smile immediately appeared on Li Baoping's face upon hearing this. "I see." Upon making her decision, Li Baoping immediately sprang into action, displaying an astonishing degree of decisiveness. "I can tell you really trust Big Sister Ruan, so I'll get her to take me to Shi Chuanjia and Lin Shui and bring them here. After that, we'll find a place to hide so you don't have to worry about us. Just focus on speaking with that crook coach driver and finding out exactly what he's plotting." "Sounds like a plan," Chen Ping'an said with a smile. Chen Ping'an and Li Baoping emerged from the swordsmithing room, and Ruan Xiao was sitting some distance away from the door, presumably to reassure the 2 of them that she wasn't eavesdropping on their conversation. She was perched on a green bamboo chair, swaying side to side with a bored expression. After hearing Chen Ping'an's request, Ruan Xiao agreed without any hesitation. "You can count on me." She then crouched down and turned to Li Baoping, indicating for the little girl to climb onto her back. Li Baoping was very reluctant to do as she was told, and she protested, "I can run really fast." "I'm definitely faster," Ruan Xiao countered with a smile. Li Baoping turned to Chen Ping'an with a displeased expression, clearly hoping that he would vouch for her speed. Chen Ping'an was just about to say something when Ruan Xiao put on a serious expression and continued, "I can make several trips back and forth before you and Chen Ping'an even make it to the town once." Li Baoping pursed her lips in a skeptical expression as she scoffed. "I know that there are immortals and mystical beings in this world, but you can't just become an immortal just because you want to be one. Do as she says, Li Baoping. There's no time to waste," Chen Ping'an urged. Li Baoping heaved a faint sigh before obediently climbing onto Ruan Xiao's back. and it was so soft and comfortable that she immediately began to nod off. Prior to her departure, Ruanxiu said to Chen Ping'an, "If you need anything, you can go to my father." Chen Ping'an nodded in response. With that, Ruanxiu set off with a loud whoosh. Li Baoping was clinging onto her back, and she suddenly heard the wind howling past her ears, causing all of the fine hairs on her entire body to stand up on end in alarm. She looked down to find that all of the buildings below had become as tiny as the blue stone slabs on Fortune Street, and that the stream had become as thin as a rope. On the ground below, Chen Ping'an looked on with a dumbstruck expression as Ruanxiu sprang up into the sky with Li Baoping on her back, then vanished in a flash. Only then did it dawn on him that just like Ning Yao, Ruanxiu was also an immortal. In the peaceful residence on Erlang Alley, Cui Chan was standing beside the pond, while the dazed young boy was seated peacefully on a small stool. "Bring me a cup of water," Cui Chan instructed. The boy immediately rose to his feet before bringing back a cup of cold water with both hands. Cui Chan accepted the cup, and with a flick of his wrist, the water cascaded toward the pond, transforming into a thin azure film of water. The scene of the ox-drawn carriage and the horse-drawn carriage entering the town then appeared on the film of water at his behest, and everything in the image was presented in exceptional detail. Cui Chan tucked his hands up his sleeves, and he appeared very casual and relaxed as he swayed back and forth from the balls of his feet to his heels like a roly-poly toy. The anxiety and agitation normally seen in a cultivator about to welcome their Dao attainment catalyst were completely absent in him. Cui Chan watched as Li Baoping bade farewell to two of the children traveling with her, then jumped down from the horse-drawn carriage before charging down the street. Meanwhile, the coach driver had been swindled away by the two young boys. I always mock Song Changjing's spies for having shit for brains, but it seems like my spies aren't much better. At the very most, he only has piss for brains. Cui Chan scoffed with a disappointed expression. However, he didn't dwell on his disappointment, and the scene displayed on the film of water quickly transitioned so that it was following Li Baoping. As he watched her rush along the street, he murmured to himself, "The children here are quite intelligent to begin with, particularly those around the same age as Song Jisun and Zhao Yao, and the slightly younger kids around this little girl's age are no slouches either. Given the blessed nature of this place, the children here become very intelligent even at a young age, and they're certainly not to be underestimated." Right as Li Baoping was approaching the stone bridge, the light glowing in Cui Chan's eyes began to ripple and churn. Like a wave crashing into a rock, Cui Chan averted his gaze slightly so that he was no longer looking at the film of water. He then closed his eyes to rest for a moment, and upon reopening his eyes, he discovered that Li Baoping had already crossed the bridge. Cui Chan's brows furrowed slightly as he mused. Could it be that the old blacksmith is naturally resentful of our great Li Empire because of the imperial family's excessive cruelty and brutality? Could that be why he also feels a sense of resentment toward me by extension? But that doesn't make sense. His true history is impossible to trace with the exception of some unsubstantiated rumors, but as an ancient swordsman, surely he's seen all types of brutality and savagery, so this really shouldn't be bothering him. The scene being depicted on the film of water was drawing closer and closer to the blacksmith shop, but all of a sudden, the film of water abruptly exploded without any warning, sending countless water droplets flying in all directions with such incredible force that they were able to punch holes through the surrounding walls, windows, and pillars. However, all of the water droplets hurtling toward Cui Chan and the young boy were instantly stopped in their tracks before exploding into even tinier water droplets, as if they had just crashed into some type of impenetrable, invisible wall. At the same time, Ruanxiu's voice rang out from up above. "You better not push your luck any further than this." Cui Chan raised his head with a grin as he said, "What a stingy old sage you are. Fine, if you don't want me to look, then I won't look, let's be civilized. I'm staying in the ancestral residence of the Yuan clan right now. What if they hold me accountable for all this damage after I return to the capital city?" He then lowered his gaze as he murmured to himself, "The former citizens of the Lu Empire should have arrived by now." After that, he took a glance at the young boy, then withdrew his gaze as he gently tapped his left and right index fingers together within his sleeves while continuing to murmur to himself, "It's better to be safe than sorry." By the time Li Huai Dongshui Jing and the coach driver found Chen Ping'an, he was in the process of helping someone construct a house. Li Huai's eyes were constantly darting around, giving him a sneaky and scheming appearance, while Dong Shuijing wore a natural expression, displaying remarkable composure. Chen Ping'an's entire body was covered in dust as he made his way over to the trio, then asked, "I heard you were looking for me?" The coach driver had a very unremarkable appearance, looking no different from the average farmer, and he rubbed his hands together while approaching Chen Ping'an, then asked in a quiet voice, "Can we go somewhere else?" "No," Chen Ping'an refused with a firm shake of his head. "If you have something to say, then say it here." A hint of displeasure appeared on the coach driver's face, but internally, he was slightly relieved. This was the type of response that he expected from a boy of Chen Ping'an's status. After a moment of hesitation, the coach driver asked, "You know Mr. Qi from the school, right? Who in this town doesn't know Mr. Qi?" Chen Ping'an snapped in an impatient manner. "But as for whether Mr. Qi knows us, that's hard to say." Li Huai was standing off to the side, doing his best to suppress his sly grin, while Dong Shuijing took a meaningful glance at Chen Ping'an. All of a sudden, someone yelled from the house under construction, "Don't slack off, Chen Ping'an. If you're done talking, then get back here and continue working." Chen Ping'an heaved a faint sigh as he urged, "If you have something to say, then make it as quick and straightforward as possible." The coach driver rubbed a hand over his own face, then exhaled as he said in a low voice, "I was entrusted by the Great Li Empire with the task of protecting these children with my life on their journey to Mountain Cliff Academy. Of course, I won't deny that I'm also responsible for making sure that they aren't taken away by other people, such as people from Great Sway Nation or Lakeview Academy. It doesn't matter if you don't know what I'm talking about, nor does it matter whether you believe me or not. I don't care what your relationship with Mr. Qi was like, and I don't care if you knew Mahjong or not, but I'm here to tell you that you should be on your guard for at least the near future because Mr. Ma was killed during our journey to Mountain Cliff Academy. Prior to his death, Mr. Ma mentioned you to me on a couple of occasions during the chats that we had, and one time, he told me that while he was sweeping the schoolyard quite some time ago, he recalled frequently seeing a child who came to squat under the window of the school to eavesdrop on the lessons being taught. The second time he mentioned you was when he spoke about how before Mr. Qi resigned from his positions as schoolteacher and mountain master of Mountain Cliff Academy, he once mentioned that you had the potential to be a good scholar, and that it was a pity that he couldn't take you to Mountain Cliff Academy as well. A wry smile appeared on the coach driver's face as he continued, "Right now, I'm most worried about these children. Their clans have all moved to the capital city of the Great Li Empire, so they have no homes to return to, and going to the academy is also no longer an option for them. Not just anyone can go and receive an education at Mountain Cliff Academy. The capital city of our Great Li Empire is home to over 1 million residents, yet throughout all these years, only around a dozen students of Mountain Cliff Academy have come out of the capital, and all of them went on to become high-ranking officials." Li Huai's head was lowered, making it impossible to glean his expression, while Dong Shuijing remained completely expressionless. All of a sudden, Ruan Xiu gently cleared her throat from afar, and as Chen Ping'an turned to look at her, she gave him a smile and a nod. Upon receiving this subtle signal from Ruan Xiu, Chen Ping'an turned to the two boys and said, "You two come with me, I have something to ask you." Li Huai immediately gave an affirmative response, then strode toward Chen Ping'an while dragging Dong Shuijing along behind him. By the time the coach driver realized that something wasn't quite right, Chen Ping'an had already dragged Li Huai and Dong Shuijing behind him, following which he took a step forward as he said, "Thanks for coming to tell me all of this. From now on, I'll take care of these children in Mr. Ma's stead. Whether we go to the capital city to reunite with their parents or do something else, I'll have to ask them what they want to do first." An awkward smile appeared on the coach driver's face and he said, "I don't think that's a good idea, Chen Ping'an. I'm more capable of keeping them safe than you are." Chen Ping'an smiled and replied, "It's all right. I'm rich now, and I know Governor Wu Yuan and right-hand Minister Donghua of the Ministry of Rights. If something happens, I'll go to them for help. Of course, I'll get Master Ruan to pass on the message to them rather than going to them directly." The coach driver's brows furrowed slightly upon hearing this, and all of a sudden, he noticed a male figure out of the corner of his eye, standing beneath the eave of a nearby house. The coach driver was considering taking matters into his own hands and having Chen Ping'an killed, but the sight of Ruan Xiong instantly had him sweating profusely, and he turned to Chen Ping'an with a smile as he said, Alright, seeing as Mr. Ma was willing to place his trust in you, I am certainly willing to do the same. If you need anything from me from now on, you can find me on 3 Mound Alley in the northern part of the town. I live in the northernmost house on the alley. I'll be sure to do so, Chen Ping'an replied with a friendly smile, and the coach driver turned to depart. Sweat began to bead up on Chen Ping'an's forehead, and only after the coach driver had completely disappeared out of sight did he turn to the 2 boys as he said, "Come with me, I'll take you to see Li Baoping." "Has Li Baoping already told you everything?" Li Huai asked. Chen Ping'an nodded in response. "What are we going to do about Shi Chuanjia and Lin Shuyi?" Dong Shuijing asked. "They've already been brought here," Chen Ping'an replied with a smile. Dong Shuijing took a glance at him and remained silent. In the same swordsmithing room from before, Chen Ping'an was standing across from the 5 children, who were seated next to one another on a pair of long benches. In descending order of age, the sequence was Shi Chuanjia, Lin Shuyi, Dong Shuijing, Li Baoping, and Li Huai. Aside from Li Huai, who was the youngest one among them by a relatively significant margin, the other 4 children were all only a few months apart in age. Li Huai and Dong Shuijing already told me about the situation. What exactly do you think that coach driver wants to do? Chen Ping'an asked. Lin Shui's fox fur coat was missing, but he still wore his usual cold expression as he scoffed. "We don't even know why Cui Minghuang killed Mr. Ma. How are we supposed to know anything else?" Shi Chuanjia was sidled up tightly against Li Baoping's shoulder, and her complexion was still slightly pale with unease. However, after returning to the town, and particularly after seeing Chen Ping'an, who she was relatively familiar with, she was feeling a lot more safe and secure. At the very least, she didn't have to worry about suddenly suffering the same horrific fate as Mr. Ma. While they were digging a grave for Ma Zhan, she had been hiding far away, bawling her eyes out in horror and distress, not contributing any effort at all. Li Huai hadn't fared much better either, hiding even further away than she had while his teeth chattered uncontrollably in fear. At this moment, Li Huai had his arms wound around his own stomach as he murmured with a dejected expression, "I'm so hungry and thirsty. This must be what starvation feels like. Mother, father, if only you could see how much your son is suffering right now." Li Baoping turned to glare at him as she snapped, "Shut up." Li Huai's head drooped even lower, and he tugged furtively on Dong Shuijing's sleeve as he asked, "Shuijing, you hungry?" "I can pretend not to be hungry," Dong Shuijing replied in a calm manner, to which Li Huai rolled his eyes in exasperation. Li Baoping was also looking quite deflated as she absent-mindedly grabbed onto one of Shi Chuanjia's braids before swinging it vigorously. "Right now, everything is a mystery to us. Lin Shuyi is right, we're dealing with opponents far more cunning and resourceful than ourselves, and we're completely outmatched. Our top priority right now should be to ensure our own survival. Only after ensuring our own safety can we think about other things, such as informing our families in the Great Li Empire's capital city that we're safe." As soon as Li Baoping mentioned informing their families of their current status, all of the children immediately turned reflexively to Chen Ping'an. Chen Ping'an was silent for a long while, then declared, "If we can't figure out what our opponents are thinking, then let's at least make sure we're all on the same page ourselves." None of the children raised any objections to this, and Chen Ping'an asked, "Do you want to go to the capital city to find your families, or do you want to do something else?" An indignant look immediately appeared on Li Huai's face as he howled, "I'd rather die than go to the capital. My parents and my sister are having the time of their lives somewhere out there. And given the personalities of everyone in my uncle's family, if they're rich now, then they'll only pick on me even more than before. They were regarding me as a thief before. They'll probably see me as a sworn enemy now. The world is so vast, yet there's nowhere for me to go." Li Baoping reached around Shi Chuanjia before giving Li Huai a firm slap on the back of the head, and he immediately fell into a dejected silence again. After a moment of contemplation, Dong Shuijing declared, "I want to continue my studies. If my parents were still in the town, I could help them work in the fields instead of going to school, but what could I possibly do if I go to the capital? I don't even know the official dialect that they speak there, and I'm not a fast learner like Li Baoping. Besides, back when my grandfather died, he insisted that I had to receive an education. He said that if I don't become a scholar in the future, then he won't accept me as his grandson, and he doesn't want me to visit his grave. If the school in the town is going to keep running, Then I'll stay in the town. Tears welled up in Shi Chuanjia's eyes as she said in a timid voice, I want to go to the capital to find my parents. As for Lin Shuyi, his brows were tightly furrowed as he said, I'll go anywhere that's safe. Li Baoping crossed her arms, and her eyes were glowing with the radiance of her aspirations as she loudly declared, I want to go to Mountain Cliff Academy, the place where Mr. Qi studied. She then rose to her feet, standing between Chen Ping'an and the other 4 children, and she pointed at Dong Shuijing as she continued, Mr. Qi's Mountain Cliff Academy is the most renowned academy on the entire Eastern Treasured Vile continent, let alone the Great Li Empire. If your grandfather knew that you were passing up the opportunity to go to Mountain Cliff Academy to stay and study in the town, he would climb out of his grave to beat you. Of course, if you're scared of dying, then you can just stay and study here. In about 10 years or so, you can proclaim yourself as half a scholar. I suppose that's always better than dying on the way to seeking an education at Mountain Cliff Academy. Dong Shuijing immediately became flushed with embarrassment. Li Baoping then pointed at Lin Shuyi as she continued, Aren't you always talking about how everyone looks down on you for being an illegitimate child? And aren't you always looking down on rich kids who grew up on Fortune Street like myself? Who's going to dare to look down on you after you go to Mountain Cliff Academy? Then again, Mr. Qi is right in saying that a wise man doesn't take undue risks, so if you want to stay here, then you can do as you please, it's not like I care. As soon as Li Baoping pointed her finger at Shi Chuanjia, the latter immediately burst into tears. A frustrated and exasperated look appeared on Li Baoping's face, and she didn't even bother to say anything to Shi Chuanjia before returning to her seat. Li Huai turned to Li Baoping with a perplexed expression and asked, Why didn't you say anything to me? I don't want to talk to you, Li Baoping replied. Li Huai was momentarily dumbstruck by this response, then raised his head to look up at the heavens with a look of melancholy and indignation in his eyes. Chen Ping'an focused his gaze solely on Li Baoping, ignoring the other 4 children as he asked, Are you sure you want to go to Mountain Cliff Academy? Li Baoping nodded in response. Mr. Qi once told us that Mountain Cliff Academy has the best book collection on the entire continent. He also said that even if there are some questions I have that even he can't answer, I'll be able to find all the answers in those books. It was clear that Li Baoping was convinced that she was already a student of the prestigious academy. It could be a very arduous journey. Are you not afraid? Chen Ping'an asked. Li Baoping's spirit was slightly dampened upon hearing this, and she conceded, I'd be a little afraid if I had to go on my own. That settles it then, Chen Ping'an declared with a bright smile. What do you mean? Li Baoping asked with a perplexed expression. I'll go to Mountain Cliff Academy with you, Chen Ping'an explained with a serious expression. Li Baoping was about to say something in reply, but the words got stuck in her throat, and tears began to well up in her eyes. If it weren't for the fact that the other 4 children were sitting next to her, she would have already erupted into sobs. Just like the first time she caught that crab from the creek long ago, she had actually already cried in secret outside, and that was why she was able to keep up such a proud and triumphant facade after returning home. Chen Ping'an beckoned to Li Baoping, and as she arrived by his side, he turned to the other 4 children sitting on the benches as he said, Wait here for a little bit. Li Baoping and I are going to go speak to someone, and the matters we'll be discussing will concern the 4 of you as well, so don't go anywhere. He then latched onto Li Baoping's hand and led her out of the swordsmithing room. As he did so, he began to talk to himself, but it also seemed as if he were speaking to someone else as he murmured, I told you that if you make a promise, then you have to keep that promise. Li Baoping was wiping tears from her eyes as she said, But at the time you also said that if you can't keep a promise, then you can just tell the person you made the promise to. Chen Ping'an shook his head as he replied in a gentle voice, Mr. Qi is no longer with us, so he won't be able to hear anything that I tell him. Around 15 minutes later, Chen Ping'an and Li Baoping had already disappeared into the distance, but Ruan Chong was still seated on the small bamboo chair, seemingly yet to return to his senses. Ruan Xiao was also seated on a chair, looking at the empty bamboo chair with a myriad of complex emotions surging through her heart. Chen Ping'an had only just asked Ruan Chong to help him purchase those 5 mountains, yet he was going to leave the town soon. If he couldn't come back, then he was going to leave 4 of the 5 mountains, namely Downtrodden Mountain, Treasured Scripture Mountain, Rainbow Cloud Mountain, an immortal herb mountain to Luxianying, Gukan, Ningyao, and Ruanxiu respectively, leaving only True Jewel Mountain to himself for the next 300 years. As for the pastry shop and the Berklover shop, he had asked Master Ruan to hire people to look after the shop in his stead, and it didn't matter to him if the shops were forced to close down due to mismanagement. However, he was going to leave behind the 100 or so normal snake gall pebbles for Master Ruan to sell, and all proceeds would go to keeping the two shops afloat. Even though he wasn't concerned about whether the two shops made profits or not, he wanted every single employee in both shops to be told that the two shops were owned by a household with the Chan surname on Clay Vase Alley. Furthermore, he had entrusted Master Ruan with the duty of taking the 4 children safely to the capital city of the Great Li Empire. As compensation, Chan Ping'an had given Ruan Qiong half of that slab of dragon-slaying platform, as well as all of the remaining gold essence copper coins left over following his purchases of the mountains and the shops. Ruan Qiong didn't refuse. However, he only promised to take Chan Ping'an and Li Baoping to the southern border of the Great Li Empire. As for what would become of them after they crossed the border, that would be entirely down to fate, and Chan Ping'an had agreed to this arrangement. At dusk, Chan Ping'an ensured that the 5 children had a place to stay, then made his way toward the town on his own. He crossed the stone bridge and entered the town, then returned to his house on Clay Vase Alley. At this point, night had already fallen, and he lit a lamp with a calm expression. Facing the flame in the lamp, Chan Ping'an stayed up the entire night, just as he would during the spring festival of each year to observe the passing of one year to the next. The calm yet resolute look on his face was illuminated by the glow of the flickering flame. Die. On the stone bridge, someone smiled as they asked. A dark room for 1,000 years, a room illuminated with a single light. What do you think, Senior? I accept, someone else replied. Die. By the time Chan Ping'an woke up, he found himself face to face with that enigmatic figure for the 4th time. The figure was hovering in midair, and their pristine white sleeves were swaying gently despite the lack of wind. The figure landed gently on the ground before making their way toward Chan Ping'an, and with each step that they took, their facial features would become slightly clearer. The figure was still tall and imposing, but not bloated or clumsy in the slightest, and as it turned out, it was a woman. In Chan Ping'an's eyes, she was extremely beautiful, so much so that she was absolutely perfect, with no room to become any more beautiful. Finally, she drew to a halt as she stood in front of Chan Ping'an, and she bent over slightly, lowering her head to look into Chan Ping'an's clean and pure eyes. She then said in a gentle voice, I've already been waiting for 8,000 years. Chan Ping'an, your aptitude for cultivation is far inferior to that of my former master, but no matter. She leaned in even closer, to the point that her forehead almost came into contact with Chan Ping'an's, and she requested, Chan Ping'an, I want you to relay a message for me to the 4 worlds outside. Can you do that? Chan Ping'an reflexively nodded in response, and the woman smiled as she suddenly sank to one knee. Even so, she was still able to look straight into Chan Ping'an's eyes just by raising her head ever so slightly. From this day forth, you, Chan Ping'an, will be my second and final master. Chan Ping'an looked on with a dazed expression. The woman's entire body was glowing with pristine white radiance, and her eyes narrowed slightly with her smile as she knelt down on one knee toward the dumbstruck Chan Ping'an. Her features were glowing, and her eyes seemed to be filled with a world of radiance as she asked in a solemn voice, Chan Ping'an, can you recite a vow with me? She extended a hand toward Chan Ping'an as she spoke, raising it vertically, and Chan Ping'an also extended a hand to gently press his palm against hers. She closed her eyes as she recited, even if the heavenly Tao were to collapse, I, Chan Ping'an, possess a single sword capable of moving mountains, splitting rivers, churning seas, taming demons, subjugating devils, slaying gods, impaling stars, destroying cities, and opening the heavens. Chan Ping'an recited along with her in his heart. Even if the heavenly Tao were to collapse, I, Chan Ping'an, possess a single sword capable of moving mountains, splitting rivers, churning seas, taming demons, subjugating devils, slaying gods, impaling stars, destroying cities, and opening the heavens. By the time Chan Ping'an woke up, he discovered that the flame in the lamp had already fizzled out, and the sky was already beginning to brighten outside. All he recalled were 5 things that the tall woman had said to him. You'll forget all of the secrets that I told you about up to this point when you wake up. and there's no need for you to try and recall them. I simply revealed them to you as I wanted to talk. If I were to appear in this world now, your current body and soul won't be able to bear my presence even if the sages don't come to subjugate you and me, so it'll only harm you while providing no benefit. Hence, let's establish an agreement of 100 years. All you have to do is become a 10th tier cultivator within the next 100 years, and you'll be able to return to the stone bridge in the town to take the iron sword. Even though I chose you as my master, that's absolutely no reason for you to become arrogant or complacent, but at the same time, you must not look down on yourself. Over the past 8,000 years, I've seen far too many stunning prodigies, the most recent of which include the likes of Chao Shi, Xie and Ma Kuxuan, but none of them have managed to catch my eye, so you can rest assured that I chose you not because my life is about to come to an end, and I have no other choice. I won't be able to battle alongside you for now, but I do have a gift for you. During the dragon-slaying battle 3,000 years ago, I had nothing else to do, so I decided to watch those kids fight, and it was quite the spectacle. They were dropping things everywhere, and I managed to pick up an exquisite white jade badge. It's quite petite and has no engravings, and I simply like the look of it. It can be used to store items, and it can be considered to be quite an old storage treasure. Compared with the popular pocket arsenals and pocket sword vaults nowadays, it's a treasure of an even higher caliber, with a storage capacity similar to that of your ancestral residence on Clay Vase Alley. On top of that, you don't have to carry it around. Instead, you can nurture it in your acupoint. I've already linked the item with your will, so all you have to do is come into contact with an object, and it'll be stored into the acupoint that the jade badge is situated in at your behest. Unless the jade badge is forcibly broken by a cultivator at or above the ascension tier, nothing will be able to harm it in the slightest. The only downside about the storage treasure is that you'll only be able to use it after you reach the middle 5 tiers. The final thing that I have to tell you is that I placed 3 additional tiny wisps of sword chi into your body. Chen Ping'an remained rooted to the spot in a dazed manner, feeling as if he were in an entirely different lifetime. His intention was to stay up the entire night in front of the lit lamp prior to leaving the town to make up for the fact that he wouldn't be able to observe the passing of the year at the end of this year. Never had he anticipated that something like this would happen. At the same time, he was feeling utterly bewildered. At the moment, his body already resembled a dilapidated house that was entirely unable to keep out the elements, so it was extremely difficult for him to gather energy. In light of that, how was he supposed to cultivate at all, let alone reach the middle 5 tiers or even the 10th tier? Not only was Chen Ping'an destined to be unable to cultivate, if he wanted to live, then he had to nurture his own body by practicing fist techniques. Ning Yao had once mentioned to him in an offhand fashion that it was very easy to damage one's aptitude and acupoints, just like how Kai Jinjian was able to point the way for him and forcibly open his acupoints with nothing more than a tap to the forehead. However, restoring a body so that it was complete and fit for cultivation was even more difficult than trying to ascend to the heavens. A good analogy here was that a small child could easily hack up a door with a meat cleaver, but it was far more difficult to restore the door to its former state. Chen Ping'an had promised to accompany Li Baoping to Mountain Cliff Academy, and that was undoubtedly going to be a very long journey. It was difficult to say whether he was even going to be able to return to the town alive, and he had no idea how he was going to fulfill this agreement of 100 years. Chen Ping'an had been very open and honest at the time, revealing his concerns to the woman, but she had brushed those concerns aside and told him that it was too late for her to go back on her decision. In her words, Chen Ping'an was her master, and if he died, then she would just have to die as well. Even if that old sword billet were to fall into the creek someday, and her soul was to completely dissipate, Chen Ping'an wouldn't owe her anything. She would only be able to blame herself for choosing the wrong master, and the consequences of that decision were hers to bear alone. At the time, Chen Ping'an still wanted to protest. Despite what she had said, how was he supposed to live with this on his conscience? They were the only 2 people involved in this agreement, so he couldn't help but feel a sense of responsibility and culpability. Chen Ping'an had no idea how to become a 10th tier cultivator, nor did he have any concept of what storage treasures and pocket treasures were. However, in spite of the fact that this agreement had placed a massive burden on his shoulders, deep down, he was feeling a little elated about it as well. From this day forth, there would be one more person in this world that had to rely on him. Following the conversation in that dream, Chan Ping'an recalled sitting side by side with the woman on a golden stone bridge that stretched on far into the distance with no end in sight, like a golden flood dragon traversing through the clouds. Chan Ping'an took a deep breath, then laid down onto the table. Ultimately, he felt like the easiest way to assess this situation was by adopting a mindset that old man Yao had imparted upon him. If something is meant to be yours, then hold on to it and don't let it go. But if something's not meant to be yours, then don't even think about it. Chan Ping'an packed all of the belongings that he needed for the trip into a small basket, including things like his slingshot, his fishing rod and line, and his flint for lighting fires, which proved to be quite a tedious process. In the end, he carefully pulled a small cloth pouch out from the bottom of his clay pot, and the pouch was full of porcelain shards. There were quite a few things that he had to pack, but none of them were very heavy. Having made many long journeys into the mountains, Chan Ping'an knew from experience that packing too much on long trips was only going to hurt him over the long run. Hence, one had to learn how to feed oneself using the natural environment around them. After hoisting the basket onto his back and locking the door of the house, Chan Ping'an stood in the yard, and he spotted the locust branch resting against the wall. After a moment of contemplation, he opened the door again and placed the branch in the house so that it wasn't exposed to the elements, thereby leading to accelerated decomposition. Chan Ping'an brought the 2 taels of silver that he had made from selling the medicinal ingredients he had gathered during his last trip into the mountains, and he paid a visit to Apricot Blossom Alley, followed by Dragon Riding Alley. It was still very early, and the shops were closed, so he squatted outside and waited patiently. Soon, the shopkeeper opened the doors of the shop while yawning in a bleary-eyed fashion, and Chan Ping'an purchased some incense sticks, paper money, and a flagon spring peach blossom wine. Finally, he bought a bag of Tartary buckwheat cakes. He recalled that his mother had eaten this cake once when he was a small boy, and she had told him that it was delicious. She also said that she was going to buy the cake for him on his 5th birthday, which was why Chan Ping'an had such a clear recollection of this memory. However, upon arriving at the pastry shop, Chan Ping'an was informed by the employee that they no longer made this type of pastry. Only the old pastry chefs knew how to make Tartary buckwheat cakes, but seeing as the shop was about to close down, those old pastry chefs had already gone to the capital city with the shopkeeper and the others to enjoy their retirement lives. Thus, Chan Ping'an had no choice but to settle for a bag of peach cakes, the same ones that Ruan Xiu had given to Li Baoping the day before. After emerging from the town, Chan Ping'an passed by the small temple where he and Ning Yao had hidden from Bai Yuan, and he continued southward until he arrived in front of a small hill. He began to climb up the hill, and halfway up the hill was a barren plot of land that hadn't been farmed for many years, as well as a pair of small soil mounds. The plot of land and the pair of mounds were completely devoid of weeds, and Chan Ping'an stood in front of the mounds as he slowly crouched down, removing the basket from his back before setting down his offerings to his ancestors one by one onto the ground. The town had been around for thousands of years, and it was unclear whether it had always been like this, or if the town's traditions had changed at some point, but none of the town's residents, regardless of their status, ever knelt down or kowtowed when visiting the graves of their ancestors. Instead, all one had to do was light 3 sticks of incense and bow thrice. Chan Ping'an naturally also followed this tradition as well, but before lighting the incense sticks, he habitually picked up a handful of soil from beside his feet as he always did, then placed it onto the mound before gently packing it down, making a symbolic gesture of adding soil to the graves. Due to the fact that he had to leave soon, he could only use the soil from nearby. Otherwise, whenever he entered the mountains, he would always collect some soil from each mountain that he visited, then bring the collection of soil here to add to the graves. Of course, there was no special meaning to any of this, it was just to make himself feel better. He always felt like he hadn't done anything for his parents back when they were still alive, so he wanted to make a bit more effort to do things for them now as a form of compensation. Additionally, Old Man Yao had once told him that this was a tradition that had been passed down from generation to generation among old-school potters, so Chan Ping'an had maintained this tradition this entire time. The 2 graves were nestled tightly against one another, and neither of them had a tombstone. After lighting 3 sticks of incense and bowing thrice to the graves, he stuck the incense sticks down into the soil in front of the graves, then opened the flagon of wine before gently pouring it onto the ground. Finally, Chan Ping'an rose to his feet, and he closed his eyes as he joined his palms together while speaking to his parents in his heart. He was telling them about how he was going on a long journey with a little girl by the name of Li Baoping, and that it was a journey that was going to take him an immeasurable distance away from home. Chui Chan was standing in a small temple by the side of the road, and he raised his head as he looked up at all of the names inscribed on the wall. The names had all been written using charcoal sticks, and the entire wall was densely packed with these names, all of which differed from one another in size and handwriting. Perhaps in the eyes of the town's residents, this was just an insignificant mural left behind by naughty children, but in the eyes of Chui Chan, it was like a river of time that was flowing through history. Situated in the sky above Eastern Treasured Vile Continent's Greatly Empire, Zhuhou Small World was the smallest of the 36 small worlds. It was only around 500 kilometers wide, and if it weren't for restrictions placed on mystical abilities, any cultivator capable of flight could easily explore the entire small world in a very short time. However, the allure of Zhuhou Small World laid not only in the treasures and artifacts left behind by the powerful cultivators who had died in battle, but also in the people who had been born in and nurtured by this blessed place, all of whom were far more intelligent and good-looking than people from other places. If a pair of powerful cultivators were to come together and produce offspring, their children would be all but sure to reach the middle 5 tiers. But what was quite astonishing was that their chances of reaching the upper 5 tiers weren't actually much higher than those of the children who were taken from Zhuhou Small World. Given the meager population of the town compared with the outside world, this was the equivalent of flood dragons emerging from a pond, and there would always be at least 1 or 2 such prodigies that arose each generation. Hence, the fall of Zhuhou Small World would have been a huge relief to all of the imperial rulers on Eastern Treasured Vile Continent, as long as they had any sense of urgency. Finally, the Song clan of the Greatly Empire had been deprived of this incredible gold mine, and that was sure to have a negative impact on the Greatly Empire's southern expansion. Chui Chan's gaze lingered on the names on the wall for a long time, and a myriad of complex emotions was running through his heart. Ever since the inception of the imperial examination during ancient times, there had been friendships between examination takers who had studied together, who were of the same age, or who came from the same hometown, and the same was true on the path of cultivation. Zhuhou Small World had fallen and settled, and it had been granted a good ending at the cost of a certain person's demise. All of the cultivators who emerged from Zhuhou Small World would be grateful to that person, but to different extents, and this was especially true for the 4 surnames and 10 clans, as well as their backers. Unfortunately, even though the Song clan of the Greatly Empire hadn't been set back by this tumultuous event, it hadn't benefited from the turmoil either. The Greatly Empire could have been a bit more humane and considerate. For example, when Ruan Qiong requested to enter Zhuhou Small World early, they could have waited a bit longer before agreeing. Furthermore, if they had known that Qi Jingchun was going to refrain from using his powers to the bitter end, choosing instead to contend with those unfathomably powerful beings with his 2 kindred characters alone, then back when the 4 powers demanded the return of the sage's subjugation treasures, the Greatly Empire's Ministry of Rights should have displayed more reluctance to return the treasures. Granted, they wouldn't have dared to refuse outright, but they certainly could have stalled for some time by claiming that this was against the rules. There was also the mistake that the Greatly Empire's imperial court had made in sending out those letters, essentially blatantly informing the 4 surnames and 10 clans that a major tribulation was about to befall them, and that they should leave the town, lest they be implicated by Qi Jingchuan's blasphemous actions. These were only a few examples of the many mistakes they had made in handling this situation. Once the emperor of the Greatly Empire realized his mistakes, or became overcome by his greed, then the imperial preceptor, who controlled half the imperial court and was pulling the strings from afar, would most likely be met with severe retribution. However, at this moment, Chui Chan was standing in the small temple with a relaxed and carefree expression, seemingly completely unfazed by the prospect of having to face the emperor's wrath. "Hold on a second," Chui Chan murmured to himself. Having already memorized all of the names on the walls, Chui Chan was just about to wipe them all away with his sleeve so no one else would be able to do anything with these names. But right as he was about to do so, Ruan Qiong appeared at the entrance of the temple with a cold smile on his face. "You're a brave little rascal, I'll give you that. How many times have I caught you now? I haven't done anything yet, have I?" Chui Chan asked with a faint smile. All of a sudden, a casual voice rang out near the temple. "Don't worry, fight to your heart's content. and I'll clean up the resulting mess. I assure you that there won't be any earthquakes or mountains being toppled. At the very most, I'll ensure that only 10% to 20% of this place gets destroyed in your battle. Ruanxiong, aren't you sick of constantly having to keep an eye on this bastard? I think you should just take the easy route and end things right here and now. He may not have done anything yet, but he's constantly prowling, like a thief plotting to steal something from you. Cui Chan's expression remained unchanged as he chuckled. How cunning of you, old man Yang! If you instigate a battle between me and Ruanxiong, you'll be able to claim the spoils without having to lift even a single finger yourself. I think that's a good idea, Ruanxiong mused with a nod. Cui Chan hurriedly extended an apologetic salute as he implored with a fawning smile. All right. From now on, I'll only wander around the town. Is that all right with you too, Sage Ruan and Senior Yang? It was clear that Ruanxiong was still weighing up his options, but Cui Chan suddenly said in a casual manner, even if Senior Yang has the ability to ensure that most of this place remains intact, what if I focus all my efforts on destroying Divine Eliga, NC Mountain and Gallant Spear Mountain? Before Ruanxiong had a chance to reply, Old Man Yang's voice rang out once again. You're just going to allow him to threaten you like that? I wouldn't be able to take that sitting down if I were you. Piss off back to Erlang Alley. Ruanxiong snapped. Cui Chan's head wobbled from side to side as he casually made his way out of the temple, and he even made a funny face at Ruanxiong while passing him by, as if he really were a cheeky young boy. After Cui Chan crossed the creek to the other side, Ruanxiong turned to find Old Man Yang seated on a withered bench in the temple, puffing on his pipe. In a rare display of compassion, Old Man Yang didn't mock Ruanxiong. Instead, he smiled as he remarked, You really do care a great deal about your daughter. Ruanxiong heaved a faint sigh, and it was clear that he was feeling very indignant about having to hold back in spite of such blatant provocation from Cui Chan. He sat down across from Old Man Yang, then leaned against the wall as he mused, I don't owe anything to this world, and I've even repaid my debt to my masters, yet that girl's mother is the only one I remain indebted to. Now that she's dead, how am I supposed to repay her? All I can do is give everything I owe her to her daughter. Old Man Yang smiled as he said, Given your status, abilities, and your relationship with the Yingyin clan, surely it's not impossible for you to find the current incarnation of your wife. Ruanxiong shook his head in response. Her aptitude for cultivation was quite mediocre in her previous life, and she wasn't even able to reach the middle 5 tiers before she passed away. So even if she's been reincarnated as a human in this lifetime, there's no chance she'll be able to recall what happened in her previous life. In my eyes, an empty husk with none of the memories that we shared is no longer my wife, so what's the point in finding her? I'll just let her live on in my heart. Old Man Yang nodded as he remarked, That's a good mindset to have. It's exceedingly difficult for militarians to progress beyond the 10th tier, yet you were able to come from behind and outstrip your contemporaries, and it seems that this isn't without reason. Ruanxiong didn't want to discuss this matter any further, so he changed the subject and asked, Do you think he was bluffing? Old Man Yang smiled as he shook his head in response. If you think he's bluffing, then you're underestimating him. There have been heroes lauded throughout history for having the courage to bring down despotic emperors at the cost of their own lives. Yet if you ask me, he's the type of person that would dare to bring down even the Buddha himself at the cost of his own life. Of course, I'm only talking about his ambition and resolve. As for whether he actually possesses the ability required to accomplish such a feat, that's yet to be seen. Ruanxiong was still rather skeptical. Old Man Yang pointed at the ground at the entrance of the temple with his pipe, where there was a particularly solid and compact path from being repeatedly trodden on, and he mused, He's different from us. He feels like he's gone down a path of no return, so if he encounters an enemy, then he feels like he has no choice but to confront them and strike them down. Alternatively, if anyone tries to surpass him from behind, they must be killed as well. When it comes to someone like him, it's impossible to simply categorize him as a good person or a bad person. All of a sudden, Ruanxiong moved on to another subject. Chen Ping'an's parents and ancestors were just ordinary residents who grew up their entire lives in the town, so how did his father know the secrets behind kindred porcelain? And why did he insist on smashing Chen Ping'an's kindred porcelain even at the expense of his own life? It's clear that someone had to have intentionally revealed these secrets to him, and encouraged him to do something like this. Old Man Yang was silent for a long while, then blew out a cloud of smoke before replying. In the beginning, I thought this was just an ordinary conflict between clans, and by the time I realized that things weren't as simple as they appeared on the surface, it was already too late. Having said that, I can't be bothered to get involved in these convoluted mind games anyway. I only think about things like this when I'm bored so I can work my brain a little and don't go senile. I thought that this was nothing more than a minor part of the massive plot that had been woven to target Qi Jingchun. But only at the last moment did I realize that this is the true kill shot. In the words of top-tier Go players, this would be considered to be a brilliancy. To put it more accurately, this wasn't done just to target Qi Jingchun. Instead, it was aimed at targeting the fortune of the scholarly sage's lineage as a whole. The final battle of Qi Jingchun's life was so spectacular that everyone habitually equated his demise with the demise of the scholarly sage's lineage, and the truth isn't far away from that. Old Man Yang took a glance at the grim look on Ruanqiong's face, then continued, "Back when you requested to enter Jewel's small world early, I suspected that perhaps you were also one of the people pulling the strings behind the scenes. Either you had no choice but to get involved because Wind Snow Temple made an agreement with the Yingyinchan clan, or you received some immense benefits from the Yingyinchan clan in secret, thereby prompting you to make the decision to establish a sect here. You were overthinking things, Senior Yang," Ruanqiong chuckled. Old Man Yang also chuckled in response. "Just because I was overthinking things doesn't mean my thought process is wrong. You're only able to maintain a clear conscience right now as militarians like yourself are very good at keeping things simple and not pondering any matter too deeply. Perhaps only after the truth is revealed to the entire world will you come to realize that you were used as a pawn." Ruanqiong's resolve remained completely unshaken by this sentiment, and he chortled, "No matter. If the Yingyinchan clan or some other power really did dare to use me as a pawn, then once I ensure the safety of my daughter, I'll be sure to exact my revenge on them." At the same time, he thought to himself, if that really is the case, then that would be perfect for me. At the very most, it'll only take me a century to forge that sword. And once it's complete, I'll be able to go anywhere and kill anyone I please. After a brief moment of silence, a curious look appeared on Ruanqiong's face as he asked, "Could it be that Qian Pingyan really is the heir to Qi Jingchun's lineage?" Old Man Yang raised his pipe, then gently tapped it against the wooden bench before pulling out some new tobacco leaves from a cloth pouch attached to his waist as he scoffed, "How am I supposed to know?" Ruanqiong knew that Old Man Yang had accumulated far too many secrets throughout his life, and he smiled as he said, "In order to enter the town, each person needs to give the town's gatekeeper a pouch of gold essence copper coins. This generation's gatekeeper was a man by the name of Zhang Dafeng. There's no way that those priceless copper coins would have fallen into the hands of the emperor of the Great Li Empire, so I can only assume that you've come into possession of them. What exactly do you intend to do with those copper coins? Would you tell me if I asked you how you plan to forge that sword in your heart?" Old Man Yang countered, and Ruanqiong immediately burst into laughter. "I'm taking this temple away with me," Old Man Yang suddenly said in an indifferent manner. Ruanqiong was rather taken aback to hear this, but he quickly replied, "As long as you don't take it out of the town, I have no objections." Old Man Yang smiled as he nodded in response. "Seeing as you agreed so easily, I can tell you a little secret." Ruanqiong gestured for Old Man Yang to go ahead. Old Man Yang blew out a dense cloud of smoke, and smoke scattered into thin wisps before surrounding the entire temple. As it turned out, the temple had already been enveloped within a thin layer of white mist prior to this, and it was clear that this was a concealment measure that Old Man Yang had taken as an additional safety precaution. Old Man Yang heaved a faint sigh, then continued, "Do you know what was most remarkable about Qi Jingchun?" Ruanqiong smiled as he replied, "He possesses exceptional aptitude and comprehension ability, and his powers are extremely fearsome as well. Otherwise, there's no way those lofty figures in the sky would have been willing to cast aside their pride and work together to strike him down." Old Man Yang shook his head in response. "Let's say that Qian Pingyan really is the one that Qi Jingchun chose. In that case, someone on the outside had to have planted Qian Pingyan as an exceptional pawn. On the surface, it appears that he was left idle for an entire decade, but in reality, a meticulous plot has been unfolding this entire time, and even I've been used during this time. What's most brilliant about all of this is that the one behind this is playing the game while detached from the game. Ultimately, a person is not an inanimate pawn, so once the pawn is planted, it'll gradually begin to develop a mind of its own. Hence, it'll become less and less like a pawn, thereby making it more and more subtle and discreet. This pawn is also accompanied by another extremely important pawn in the form of Song Jisun, who carries the hopes of the entire Song clan on his shoulders. With Song Jisun acting as a further distraction and attracting all of the attention, no one would pay any heed to Chen Ping'an, and that allows him to remain hidden in plain sight. A solemn look appeared on Ruan Qiong's face as he mused. Qi Jingchun was supposed to be someone with the potential to establish a teaching of his own. Granted, this notion was intentionally promoted by those harboring sinister intentions to place Qi Jingchun on an even higher pedestal, but it's definitely not entirely nonsensical. How is it possible that he didn't spot any signs? Even I only managed to figure out this convoluted plot just now. And I must say that it's absolutely riveting. I'm nothing more than a passive bystander, and I already find this fascinating. How do you think someone directly involved in the plot would feel? Old Man Yang suddenly burst into laughter, leading to a coughing fit as he slapped his own leg and mused. In reality, Qi Jingchun had already seen through the plot long ago. He may have been a scholar, but he didn't play by the rules at all. Do you know what he did before he died? He intentionally paid a visit to where I was staying, and aside from giving Chen Ping'an that pair of mountain and water seals, he took a short trip with Chen Ping'an and said something to him at the end. Care to guess what he said? Ruan Qiong was extremely intrigued, but he replied, "I've never had any idea what Qi Jingchun was thinking." Old Man Yang sighed. Qi Jingchun told him that a wise man can allow himself to be oppressed to a certain degree, but not to an unreasonable extent. Ruan Qiong pondered this for a moment, and initially he didn't think much of it. However, moments later, his expression began to change slightly, and before long, his entire face had become flushed with realization, and his hands had balled up into tight fists. He shook his head as he heaved a resigned sigh. "I must concede my inferiority to Qi Jingchun." Old Man Yang nodded in response as he mused with an absent-minded look in his eyes. There are two sets of intentions to his words, the first of which is to get Chen Ping'an to tell me and everyone else that as long as we play by the rules, it doesn't matter what we do to Qi Jingchun. He had already accepted his fate, and he didn't care whether he won or lost, or if he lived or died. Old Man Yang then rose to his feet as he continued. His second intention is for Chen Ping'an to think back on this a decade later, or even a century later. He was telling Chen Ping'an that even if he were to find out the truth, which was that he was the true pawn that had led to Qi Jingchun's demise, he shouldn't feel guilty, because Qi Jingchun had already figured everything out long ago. All of a sudden, Ruan Qiong sprang to his feet before storming away. What a load of bullshit! I can't believe someone as powerful and talented as Qi Jingchun would accept such a cowardly demise. If I had his powers, I would have stomped a hole straight through Eastern Treasured Vile Continent and punched a rift into the heavens. I need to go have a drink. Old Man Yang smiled as he left the temple with one hand clasped behind his back, and with a gentle flick of his other hand, the temple vanished into thin air, only to reappear in his grasp. I heard that Imperial Preceptor Cui Chan of the Greatly Empire was once the scholarly sage's first disciple, so surely he's capable of more than he's displayed thus far. I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do. Old Man Yang very rarely left the town, but on this occasion, he was crossing the stone bridge, and as he did so, his body became more and more hunched over, and he was walking along in solemn silence. He crossed the stone bridge twice in succession, but nothing happened. After stepping down from the bridge the second time, Old Man Yang made his way back to the town with a dejected expression as he thought to himself, could that really have been a one-time opportunity that won't present itself again if it's missed the first time? Ma Kuxuan was born from the will of the world. Yet even he isn't worthy of an audience with you? Why won't you meet him just once, even if it's just to make his acquaintance and not to accept him as your master? What kind of person would it have to take for you to give the nod? Setting aside the 5,000 years before that, even Jules' small world has existed for a whole 3,000 years. During all that time, how many heroic figures who have gone on to carve out scintillating legacies for themselves on Eastern Treasured Vile Continent have emerged from this town? With your help, any of them could have easily progressed a few tiers further. Beyond the 11th and 12th tiers, Even further advancement of just 2 tiers is the difference between night and day. All was silent on the stone bridge, and the metal sword hanging beneath the bridge remained completely still. Old man Yang heaved a faint sigh, then murmured to himself in a self-deprecating voice, "It seems you've already resigned yourself to your fate. So be it. In that case, I'll leave you to your own devices. That way, I won't have to worry that what little remains of our lineage will be ruined because of you. If I think about it like that, this is a good thing. I've only made a minor gamble, so I don't have to worry about losing everything." Chen Ping'an was carrying his basket on his back as he returned from the small hill. On the way back, he discovered that the temple was nowhere to be found, and he looked around with a befuddled expression to check that he hadn't misremembered the temple's location. In the end, he was able to confirm that the temple really had carried away like a rock. However, at this point, Chen Ping'an had already grown accustomed to these strange occurrences, so he didn't think much of it. Upon arriving at the blacksmith shop, he paid a visit to the earthen hut where all of his belongings were stored, and after packing what he was going to bring and leaving behind the rest, he emerged from the hut to find Li Baoping. Li Baoping stood before him, raising her little head to look up at him, and her face was glowing with elation and excitement. She had all types of embroidered pouches dangling haphazardly all over her body, and there were no fewer than 7 or 8 such pouches in total. In addition to that, there was also a small basket on her back, the top of which was covered by a conical bamboo hat to keep the contents of the basket safe from the elements. Everything had most likely been packed for her by Ruan Xiu at her behest. Ruan Xiu was dressed in green as she stood beside Li Baoping, who was wearing her usual red jacket, and the two of them were looking very festive. Chen Ping'an looked down at Li Baoping with a smile as he asked, "Did you pack food?" Li Baoping nodded in response as she eagerly replied, "The basket is mostly filled with food that big sister Ruan gave me, and the rest are all books. It's not heavy." "Well, it's not that heavy. Just tell me if you get tired of carrying the basket," Chen Ping'an said. Li Baoping puffed out her chest as she scoffed. "There's no way I would get tired," Ruan Xiu said in a gentle voice. "I've packed a map of the northern region of Eastern Treasured Vile Continent, maps of all of the Great Li Empire and Great Sui Nations counties, and several other even smaller maps in Li Baoping's basket. However, after you leave the Great Li Empire, you have to make sure to regularly ask for directions. Thankfully, Li Baoping knows how to speak the official dialect that's used across the entire Eastern Treasured Vile Continent, so you shouldn't have any problems there. I also put some silver and copper coins in the basket. They're nothing compared with the gold essence copper coins that you gave to my father, so you'd better not refuse." An amused smile appeared on Chen Ping'an's face as he said, "I'm not an idiot, why would I refuse free money?" "You still say you're not an idiot?" Ruan Xiu exclaimed in an angry voice. "If you're not an idiot, why would you do this when they have nothing to do with you?" As soon as these hurtful words slipped out of her mouth, she was immediately overcome with regret, and she hurriedly stopped before she could say anything else because the 4 other schoolchildren were standing not far away. Chen Ping'an had been making faces at her this entire time, trying to get her to stop, and he heaved an internal sigh of relief as he said, "I'll be counting on you to do what we discussed yesterday." Ruan Xiu nodded in response. "Don't worry about it. I'll make sure to keep the keys safe and go to clean up the houses every once in a while." Chen Ping'an took a deep breath, then turned to Li Baoping as he declared, "It's time to set off." "Yay!" Li Baoping was jumping for joy. Thus, with matching baskets of different sizes on their backs, the two of them departed into the distance, commencing their journey to Great Sui Nation in the south while everyone else looked on. Along the way, Li Baoping was chattering nonstop, telling Chen Ping'an about many interesting stories from the town. Finally, they reached the subject of the trip that they had embarked on, and she adopted a mature demeanor as she said, "All scholars above a certain age need to carry swords with them during their travels, not just for protection, but also to show that they're adept both in their studies and martial arts." Chen Ping'an was quite amused to hear this. "That may be correct, but I'm not a scholar like you." Li Baoping was momentarily stumped by this reply, and she quickly fell silent, as if this revelation had significantly dampened her mood. Chui Chan bought a flagon of premium wine from the wine shop in the town, then slowly strolled his way back to Erlang Alley. Upon returning to the Yuan clan's ancestral residence, Chui Chan faltered momentarily after unlocking the gate, but still pushed the gates open with a smile in the end. He quickly entered the courtyard, then closed the gates and made his way to the pond, where he saw a shimmering and ethereal male figure standing beneath the plaque of the main hall. He sat down onto a chair beside the pond, then opened the flagon of wine before taking a whiff. Only then did he turn to the ethereal figure with a smile as he said, "There may only be a wisp of your soul left, but it's still quite unbecoming of a gentleman like yourself to trespass on private property like this. Wouldn't you agree, junior brother Qi?" The ethereal figure turned around, and his features were a little unclear, but it was still possible to see that he was none other than Qi Jingchun. Qi Jingchun smiled as he said, "On that day, you made it appear as if you and Cui Minghuang were putting on an act for Wu Yuan, but in reality it was an act for me, wasn't it? Aren't you tired of all of these deceptions?" Cui Chan smiled as he asked, "Oh? Have you managed to figure something out?" Qi Jingchun was standing at the northern end of the pond, directly facing Cui Chan, who was seated at the southern end of the pond, and he asked, "Why is it that you dropped down from the 12th tier to the 10th tier?" Cui Chan leaned back against his chair, holding his wine flagon between two of his fingers as he swirled its contents around. "It's all thanks to that teacher of ours. Who could have anticipated that you had already detached yourself from him? That's why your cultivation base wasn't negatively affected at all, even as the position of our teacher's deity statue was constantly slipping. On the contrary, you've only been progressing upward. Ironically, I turned my back on our teacher long ago, yet I'm still unable to escape the influence of his lineage. What's most crushing to me is the realization that I'll never be able to surpass our teacher with my knowledge, so what else could I do? I couldn't just do nothing and watch while I was dragged down by our teacher's demise. The problem is the magnitude of the impact from the collapse of our teacher's deity statue. It's not like a small rock falling into a lake. Instead, it's like an entire mountain plunging into a lake, creating such an enormous splash that no one can avoid being splattered, unless they've already made it to shore like you. Hence, I came up with a little plan. What do you think that plan is, junior brother Qi? You want to use the merit of others to benefit yourself in order to transcend your ego," Qi Jingchun replied. Cui Chan's expression stiffened slightly upon hearing this, and the swirling of the wine flagon also ceased. Qi Jingchun heaved a faint sigh, then continued, "The best outcome would be for you to surpass me and our teacher based on the merit of your knowledge so you can receive the recognition of the world and all beings, but unfortunately, that's beyond your reach. The second best outcome would be for our teacher's lineage to end with me, following which you seize this lineage for yourself. Even if you can't reach the same heights as our teacher did in the Confucian Temple, at the very least, you'll still be in an infinitely better position than serving as the greatly empire's imperial preceptor. The final outcome that's still desirable for you would be to assign someone as your shadow, then entering a state of Buddhist meditation with your true body. If that person can remain true to themselves, then that'll equate to you maintaining your resolve when faced with a certain hurdle, ultimately presenting the catalyst required for you to return to the 11th tier. Cui Chan, you must have thought that regardless of what happens, you'll be the one to come out on top no matter what, right? I know that you've already prepared backup plans so that even if Chan Ping'an is able to maintain his purity and his resolve, you'll still be able to chip away at him. For example, you could maximize the flaws of those children to constantly whittle away at Chan Ping'an's mental state, like grinding a mirror against a rock, causing its surface to become coarse and unsightly and ultimately shatter. In that case, if Chan Ping'an is the one I chose to carry on my lineage, then your plan will have achieved a resounding success, allowing you to claim the fortune of my lineage and that of our teacher, which would be a far superior an outcome to the third method of Buddhist meditation. Cui Chan's complexion was beginning to turn deathly pale. Qi Jingchun smiled as he said, "If you're willing to give up on your plan now, I can allow you to achieve the third outcome. Relatively speaking, it's the least desirable of the three outcomes, but it'll still be immensely beneficial for you. And all of these years you've spent scheming and plotting will finally yield the rewards that you desire." Cui Chan rose to his feet with a cold sneer as he scoffed. "Qi Jingchun, nothing more of you remains than a pathetic wisp of your soul. What makes you think you're in a position to be discussing terms with me? I'm giving you one final chance," Qi Jingchun repeated with a calm expression. Cui Chan's face was twisted with fury as he roared, "How dare you attempt to shake my mental state?" A hint of melancholy appeared on Qi Jingchun's face as he called out in a gentle voice, Senior brother Chui. Chui Chan dashed the wine flagon in his hand violently onto the ground, then took a step forward as he stabbed a finger at Qi Jingchun from across the pond and roared, "You're not going to beat me, Qi Jingchun." Qi Jingchun clasped one hand behind his back while sweeping his other sleeve through the air, and the spilled wine that was flowing over the ground beside Chui Chan's feet poured into the pond before forming a rippling film of water, much like the one that Chui Chan had conjured up not long ago. Chan Ping'an and Li Baoping were depicted on the screen of water. Li Baoping was walking along sideways, raising her head to look up at Chan Ping'an as she threw one question at him after another. There was a smile on Chan Ping'an's face as he patiently answered the barrage of strange questions thrown at him by Li Baoping, and if she raised a question that he didn't know the answer to, then he would simply admit that he didn't know. He didn't feel embarrassed at his inability to answer some questions, and Li Baoping never seemed to grow bored of asking questions. "Chui Chan, do you still not understand?" Qi Jingchun asked. Chui Chan was staring intently at the scene being depicted on the film of water, and his face was deathly pale. His lips were quivering uncontrollably as he murmured to himself, "That's impossible." He raised his head, and his expression was twisted to a terrifying degree as he spat through gritted teeth. "Qi Jingchun, you chose a woman to become your only direct disciple? What's wrong with that?" Qi Jingchun challenged with a calm smile. Chui Chan took a deep breath, and the corners of his lips perked up a little as he said, "Even if Chan Ping'an remains true to himself, I'll just have to do away with all of my backup plans. In fact, I'll even go out of my way to help him, and I'll still be able to win, just not as much as I could have otherwise. What are you going to do, Qi Jingchun? Are you going to screw over Chan Ping'an just to obstruct my pursuit of the great Tao?" A deranged look appeared on Chui Chan's face, and he chortled with glee. "Chan Ping'an's fate is interconnected with mine. If I fall, so does he. What are you going to do now, Qi Jingchun?" Qi Jingchun remained completely unfazed as he said, "I suggest you cut your losses and proceed no further with your plan. Even in the worst-case scenario, you'll only fall to the 6th tier, so you'll at least still be in the middle 5 tiers. Have you gone insane, Qi Jingchun?" Chui Chan snarled with a dark expression. Qi Jingchun took a glance at Chui Chan, then heaved a faint sigh as he reached out a pair of fingers before gesturing as if he was placing an object onto something. In the image depicted in the film of water, Chan Ping'an and Li Baoping remained completely oblivious, but Chui Chan could see that a jade hairpin had suddenly appeared, nestled peacefully in Chan Ping'an's hair. A dazed look of shock and horror appeared on his face as he stabbed a trembling finger at Qi Jingchun. "Qi Jing." In the end, he was unable to even utter the final syllable of Qi Jingchun's name before his Dao heart almost fully collapsed, resulting in him bleeding out of all 7 of his orifices. He collapsed back onto his chair, then quickly arranged his hands into the treasure bottle seal as he panted in a raspy voice, "I have to stabilize my soul." Instead of looking at the terrible state that Chui Chan was in, Qi Jingchun raised his head and cast his gaze up toward the sky as he said, "You must learn from your mistakes. If you dare to sneak around and hatch any further sinister plots in the next 60 years, I have ways to make you lose the entirety of your cultivation base and fall to become mortal. Of course, given how stubborn and fixated you are, I'm sure you won't believe me, but that doesn't matter to me. It's up to you whether you choose to believe me or not. The first time I told you not to lose faith in our teacher. You didn't believe me, and as a result, your cultivation base suffered. Prior to coming to Jewel's small world, I told you not to plot against Mountain Cliff Academy, yet once again you didn't listen to me. This time it's still up to you whether you heed my advice or not." After departing from the Yuan clan's ancestral residence on Erlang Alley, Qi Jingchun embarked on his last trip in this world. First, he paid a visit to the school, then the stone bridge, followed by the grave of his junior brother Ma Zhan, and in the end, he paid a visit to the heavens. Finally, after returning to the ground, he appeared silently beside Chan Ping'an and Li Baoping to walk alongside them, but the 2 children were completely oblivious to this. With each step that the 3 of them took, Qi Jingchun's body would fade further and further. Finally, he drew to a halt, watching as the 2 children continued onward into the distance, and there was a mixture of concern, regret, sorrow, joy, and pride in his eyes. He gave them a gentle wave as a silent farewell. "Looks like this is it. This is not a bad ending for me." Die. Hold on. Since when did you have a jade hairpin in your hair? Huh. I don't know. When did this happen? Chun Ping'an, you're actually a rich kid posing as a poor kid, am I right? I'm not, I swear. At the very least, that's no longer the case. I've only been rich for a few days. Fine, I'll believe you. But what's the deal with that wooden sword protruding out of your basket? I don't know anything about that either. Chun Ping'an, if you keep this up, then I won't like you anymore. But I really have no clue. Fine. I'll wait until tomorrow before I stop liking you then.